The conference room on the 82nd floor of Vought Tower gleamed with the sterile perfection of corporate evil. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked New York City like the eyes of a predator surveying prey. Around the mahogany table sat the executives who'd turned superheroism into America's most profitable product, Stan Edgar at the head, Ashley Barrett nervously clutching her tablet, and various vice presidents whose souls had been sold so long ago. They'd forgotten they'd ever had them. Q3 projections show Homelander's approval rating at 87%, Ashley said, her voice carrying that particular tremor of someone who knew one wrong word could end her career or her life. The real heroes where Cape's campaign is outperforming. The air in the center of the room tore open, not metaphorically. The fabric of reality ripped like cheap cloth, revealing a swirling vortex of crimson energy that made the lights flicker in every phone in the room short out simultaneously. The executives jumped back, chairs scraping against marble. Ashley screamed. Stan Edgar didn't move, his eyes narrowing with the calculated assessment of a man who'd seen soups do impossible things for decades. A figure stepped through the portal, tall, imposing, dressed in a long coat that seemed designed for a different era. His face was a nightmare, skin stretched tight and red over a skull, lipless mouth, eyes that burned with an intelligence that had survived decades and dimensions. The cosmic cube's energy crackled around his fingers as the portal sealed behind him. Red Skull stood in Vought Tower and surveyed the room, with the contempt of a true believer, witnessing false prophets. Interesting, he said, his accent thick with the echoes of 1940s Germany. I seek gods and find middle management. Stan Edgar rose slowly, his expression unchanged. In a world of narcissistic soups and terrified sycophants, he'd learned that showing fear was the fastest way to lose power. Security to 82. Your security will not arrive, Red Skull interrupted, examining his surroundings with the analytical gaze of a military strategist. I have temporarily disrupted your communications. I required privacy for this introduction. He picked up a brochure from the table. The 7 Heroes You Can Believe In, and his lipless mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. Tell me, in this world, what have you done with your Superman? Ashley looked to Stan, who gave her the slightest nod. She stammered. The 7 are America's premier superhero team, protecting. You sell them like breakfast cereal, Red Skull observed, tossing the brochure aside. I have been to many worlds, many timelines. The cosmic cube shows me infinite possibilities. He approached the windows, hands clasped behind his back in a pose that screamed military discipline. In most, those with power either rule or are hunted. But here you have accomplished something remarkable. You have convinced your Superman that being products is power. Stan Edgar's voice was measured, controlled. Who are you? I am Johann Schmidt. In my world, they called me Red Skull. I led HYDRA, nearly conquered nations, fought against weak men who denied humanity's natural hierarchy. He turned, and those burning eyes fixed on Edgar, and I was defeated by Captain America and his naive belief in equality. But the cube granted me escape, showed me possibilities across the multiverse. He gestured at the city below. And I arrive here, in a world that has already embraced what I fought to create, a society that worships the strong, markets their superiority, and teaches the masses to love their own subjugation. The executives exchanged glances. Ashley looked like she might pass out. But Stan Edgar leaned forward slightly, the ghost of interest crossing his features. Mr. Schmidt, he said carefully, I think we should have a longer conversation. Ashley, clear my afternoon, and have someone bring our guest something to drink. He's traveled a long way. Red Skull's skull face twisted again. You do not fear me. I've worked with Homelander for 20 years, Stan replied. Fear is counterproductive. Opportunity, however. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Tell me about Hydra's organizational structure. I'm curious about your management philosophy. Outside the windows, New York continued its oblivious existence. People took selfies with 7 merchandise. Billboards advertised Homelander's new movie. Vought stock climbed another 3 points. None of them knew that something far older, far more ideological, and far more dangerous than any soup had just entered their world. In a surveillance room 17 floors down, a technician noticed the Communication blackout on 82 and reached for her phone. Before she could dial, a figure appeared behind her. Female, dressed in Vought tactical gear, but moving with a precision that spoke of military training, far beyond corporate security. Don't, the woman said in German-accented English. She'd come through the portal with Red Skull, his advance agent. Your masters are negotiating. Let them talk. Soon enough, everyone will know we're here. The technician froze, finger hovering over the emergency button. Good, the Hydra agent said. You're learning already. Compliance is the first step to order. 3 blocks away, in a dingy apartment above a laundromat, Billy Butcher sat, watching the news with a glass of whiskey, and his usual expression of barely contained homicidal rage. The report showed Homelander rescuing a cat from a tree, staged. Obvious, insulting to anyone with a functioning brain. Fucking cunt, Butcher muttered, not for the first time that hour. His phone buzzed. A text from got something weird. Power surge at Vought Tower. Might be nothing. Butcher stared at the message. His instincts, honed by years of fighting corrupt soups, tingling. Power surges at Vought were never nothing. They were usually Homelander having a tantrum, A-Train doing coke, or another soup's death being covered up. He texted back, keep watching. Something's always fucking happening with those cunts. But even Butcher, who'd seen the depths of Vought's depravity, couldn't imagine what had just walked through a dimensional portal into his world. He couldn't know that an ideology older and purer than Vought's commercial evil had just arrived. Red Skull sat across from Stan Edgar, accepted a glass of water he had no intention of drinking, and began to explain his vision. Not the corporate vision of profitable soups, but the original vision, the one that had nearly conquered the world in the 1940s, refined by decades of survival, and now encountering a world that had already done half his work for him. Tell me, Mr. Edgar, Schmidt said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. What is the purpose of your Superman? Profit, Stan replied without hesitation. Power through capital. Pathetic. Red Skull's contempt was palpable. You waste gods on quarterly earnings. I can show you what they're truly for. Stan Edgar's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest. Calculation. The recognition that this monster from another world understood something about power that even Vought had missed. Outside, the sun set over New York, painting the sky red. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Sometimes the monsters we create are nothing compared to the ones that find us. Homelander arrived at Vought Tower at 9 p.m., cape billowing dramatically despite the absence of wind, a quirk he'd mastered for maximum visual impact. He'd been filming a cameo for a children's hospital commercial, smiling at dying kids while fantasizing about laser visioning. The director who'd asked for a 7th take, the emergency summons from Stan had interrupted his post-shoot routine of flying to random rooftops and screaming into the void. He landed on his penthouse balcony with calculated precision, already irritated. Stan Edgar didn't summon him. Stan Edgar suggested, requested, occasionally demanded. But summon? That implied Homelander was some kind of employee instead of a god who'd chosen to wear their logo. The elevator ride down to the 82nd floor gave him time to x-ray the conference room. Stan sat at the table, posture perfect as always. Ashley hovered nearby, more nervous than usual. And someone else, someone whose skeletal structure looked wrong, dense, old, the skull visible beneath. Red skin was genuine bone, not makeup or prosthetics. Enhanced, if Homelander's assessment was correct, but not from Compound V. The cellular structure was different. Interesting. Homelander entered without knocking, because doors were suggestions for lesser beings. Stan, Ashley, his blue eyes fixed on Red Skull with the instant territorial aggression of an alpha predator, encountering something that didn't immediately cower. And you are. Red Skull rose with military precision, studying Homelander, the way a veteran soldier might study a dangerous but undisciplined weapon. Johann Schmidt, I've been told you are this world's finest specimen. Told correctly. Homelander's smile was all practiced. American charm and underlying psychosis. Homelander, leader of the 7, most powerful soup on the planet. Savior of a product Red Skull interrupted, his accent turning the words into an insult. A mascot. A children's toy that bleeds. The temperature in the room dropped. Ashley's tablet slipped from her fingers. Stan Edgar's eyes narrowed fractionally, the most emotion he'd shown in years. Homelander's smile didn't waver, but his eyes began to glow red at the edges. I'm sorry, I must have misheard you. Sounded like you just called me a toy. I called you what you are. Red Skull stepped closer, fearless in a way that made Homelander's brain short-circuit with confusion. Everyone feared him. The terrified, the worshipful, the resentful, they all had fear underneath. But this skull-faced man looked at him with nothing but cold assessment. In my world, I fought gods. Thor, Captain America enhanced to peak human perfection. Cosmic entities. I lost, yes, but I lost to beings of conviction. You. He gestured dismissively. You are a child given terrible power and told to smile for cameras. Homelander's heat vision flared. Twin beams of concentrated death aimed directly at Red Skull's face. The kind of blast that could slice through steel, concrete, flesh. The kind that had killed dozens of people. Vought's cleanup crews had erased from history. Red Skull raised one hand. The cosmic cube fragment embedded in his palm flared with crimson energy, and Homelander's heat vision bent around him, scorching the walls on either side. The air shimmered with impossible geometry, reality folding to protect the Nazi from the soup. Impossible, Homelander breathed, heat vision dying as shock replaced rage. The cosmic cube holds the power of gods, Red Skull explained calmly, as if he hadn't just casually deflected an attack that could level buildings. It showed me the multiverse, infinite worlds where beings like you exist. In most, you would be magnificent. Here, he lowered his hand. You are an advertisement with laser eyes. Homelander's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed to attack again, to prove his superiority, to make this red-faced monster understand who was truly powerful. But that casual deflection had done something. No one had managed since he was a child in the lab. It had made him uncertain. Homelander. Stan Edgar's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. Mr. Schmidt has made some interesting observations about our business model. I'd like you to hear them before you decide whether to kill him. I could kill him right now, Homelander said, but it came out defensive rather than threatening. Could you? Red Skull's lipless mouth curved. I survived Steve Rogers at his peak. I commanded armies while you were being manufactured in a laboratory. I built an empire from ideology while you were learning to smile on cue. He walked to the windows, looking down at the city. But I am not here to fight you, Homelander. I am here to offer you something Vought never has. What's that? The words escaped before Homelander could stop them. Curiosity winning over injured pride. Purpose beyond popularity. Power beyond profit. Red Skull turned, and something in his burning eyes promised terrible things. They tell you that you are superior. They market your superiority. But they have never let you be superior. Every time you wish to act as a god should, to rule, to enforce natural hierarchy, to eliminate weakness, they restrain you with focus groups and PR strategies. Homelander's enhanced hearing picked up, Ashley's heartbeat accelerating to dangerous levels. Stan Edgar remained perfectly still, watching this interaction, with the focus of a man witnessing a potential corporate revolution. I don't need restraint, Homelander said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. I choose to be a hero. Do you? Red Skull moved closer, his presence carrying the weight of absolute conviction that came from decades of unshakable belief. Or do you simply fear their leverage? The public opinion they've taught you to crave like a drug? The love you've been conditioned to need? He paused. I know what you did to that airliner. I know about the mayor's nephew. I know about every little transgression Vought has buried. Not because I investigated, because it is obvious to anyone who understands that power without purpose creates only chaos. Homelander's fists clenched, cape rustling. How do you? The cube shows me many things. Red Skull tapped his temple. But more importantly, I recognize the pattern. You are a weapon they have convinced is a hero. You have the strength of a god and the discipline of a celebrity. It is wasteful. If you're trying to recruit me for some Nazi bullshit. Nazi. Red Skull laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Such a simple word for a complex ideology. Tell me, Homelander, what is the difference between my belief in genetic superiority and Vought's creation of genetic superiors? Between my master race and their master product, I simply had the honesty to call it what it was. Stan Edgar finally spoke. His voice cutting through the philosophical poison Red Skull was spreading. Mr. Schmidt makes an interesting point. We've spent decades marketing soups as aspirational products while simultaneously ensuring they remain controllable. It's a delicate balance. One that is crumbling, Red Skull added. I have been in your world for 6 hours. Already I have observed the cracks. Starlight's defection, Stormfront's exposure, the growing skepticism. You have built your empire on the worship of false gods. But the congregation is losing faith. He focused on Homelander with laser intensity. And you, their greatest creation, are drowning in the need for validation they engineered into your psychology. I don't need anything from anyone, Homelander said. But the words rang hollow in the expensive conference room. Then prove it, Red Skull challenged. Stop performing. Start ruling. You are powerful enough to reshape this nation in your image. Instead, you rescue cats and smile for cameras. Hydra understood that true power requires purpose, vision, ideology. Without that, you are simply a very dangerous child throwing tantrums. Ashley made a small whimpering sound. Stan Edgar's expression remained neutral, but his fingers drummed once against the table, a tell that appeared perhaps twice a year, indicating actual interest in the proceedings. Homelander stood frozen, caught between rage and the seductive pull of someone finally acknowledging what he'd always believed about himself, that he was superior, that he should rule, that the constant performance was beneath him. Red Skull saw the hesitation and pressed his advantage. I do not ask you to join HYDRA. That organization is dead, a relic of my world. But I offer you something more valuable, the framework to transform what you are into what you could be. Vought has given you power. I can give you vision. And what do you get out of this? Homelander's suspicion finally cutting through the seduction. A worthy experiment. Red Skull's smile was a terrible thing. In every world I have seen, beings like you either become tyrants or are destroyed by those they protect. This world has found a third option. You are neither. You are a product pretending to be both. I wish to see what happens when someone removes the pretense. Stan Edgar stood. Gentlemen, this conversation is approaching dangerous territory. Mr. Schmidt, your philosophical observations are noted. But Homelander has commitments tomorrow. A morning show appearance, lunch with the mayor. See, Red Skull gestured at Stan. Even now, they schedule your godhood. Homelander's jaw tightened. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the building's ventilation and Ashley's panicked breathing. Then Homelander smiled, not his practiced hero smile, but something colder and more genuine. I'm listening, he said quietly. And in that moment, Red Skull knew he'd found fertile ground for his ideology in this strange new world. Homelander wasn't Captain America. There was no unshakable moral core to fight against. He was exactly what Red Skull had said, a weapon convinced it was a hero, waiting for permission to become what it truly wanted to be. Stan Edgar recognized the shift immediately. In 20 years of managing Homelander's psychosis, he'd developed an instinct for when the soup was approaching a breaking point. This was different. This wasn't rage or neediness. This was temptation. Ashley, Stan said calmly. Please leave us. Ashley fled gratefully, heels clicking against marble as she escaped to relative safety. The three men remained. The corporate executive who'd built an empire on controlled evil, the Nazi who'd built one on ideological evil, and the soup who'd been waiting his entire manufactured life for someone to give him permission to stop pretending. Outside the windows, New York glittered with ignorant beauty, unaware that something ancient and terrible had just begun to take root in its most powerful protector. The next morning, Billy Butcher kicked in the door of a meth lab in Queens with his usual subtlety, which is to say, none at all. The three dealers inside reached for weapons. Butcher shot two in the kneecaps and grabbed the third by his throat, slamming him against a wall hard enough to crack plaster. Where's your supply coming from? Butcher growled, his accent thick with working-class fury. Fuck you, man. I don't. Butcher tightened his grip. Wrong answer. Try again. And this time, remember I've got nothing to lose, and you've got kneecaps I haven't shot yet. Jesus. Okay. Some new guys, man. Military types. They came through last week, said they were expanding operations. Needed local distribution. Military. Butcher's eyes narrowed. What kind of military? I don't know, man. They had these tattoos. Weird shit. Octopus with a skull? And they spoke German sometimes. Look, we just move product, we don't ask. Butcher dropped him and pulled out his phone, snapping a photo of the tattoos the dealer described with his hands. Hydra symbols. He'd seen them before in old CIA files he'd stolen years ago. Nazi occult division from World War II. Supposedly destroyed by Captain America in some other reality. Fuck me, Butcher muttered. His phone buzzed. Calling. Yeah. Butcher, we got a problem. MM's voice had that tight quality. That meant he'd found something genuinely concerning. Not just regular Vought fuckery. I've been tracking that power. Surge at Vought Tower. It wasn't a surge, it was a dimensional breach. And there's been chatter on dark web forums. People claiming to have seen Hydra symbols around the city. Recruitment flyers in German. Some kind of organization moving into New York. Already on it. Butcher said, looking at the groaning dealers. Found 3 cunts slinging meth with Hydra connections. What's Hydra? Nazi super science organization from Marvel's universe, supposedly. But that's fictional, so was Compound V until we learned better, Butcher interrupted. Nothing's fictional when you're dealing with Vought's level of fucked up. They probably bought the rights and franchised it. That's not how the multiverse works. Oi, the multiverse can fuck right off. I've got Nazis in my city, and Homelander's still breathing. Priorities. Butcher stepped over the bleeding dealers. Get Frenchie and Kimiko. Tell them we're hunting fascists tonight. Should make Frenchie nostalgic. He hung up and looked at the dealer still conscious. Here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna tell your new German friends that you've got a big buyer interested. Someone with connections to soups. Set up a meeting. They'll kill me if they find out and I'll kill you if you don't. Choose wisely, cunt. Across town, in a penthouse suite Stan Edgar had quietly purchased through shell companies, Red Skull stood before a holographic display showing Vought's complete operational structure. Every division, every asset, every soup, every dirty secret. Stan had provided full access, a gesture that spoke to either tremendous trust or tremendous arrogance. Red Skull suspected the latter. Impressive, Schmidt admitted, manipulating the display with gestures. You have built something remarkable, Mr. Edgar. A corporate empire that controls not just markets, but mythology. You have convinced the masses that their superiors serve them, when the truth is precisely opposite. Stan Edgar sat in a leather chair, whiskey in hand, watching the Nazi from another dimension analyze his life's work. You understand that if I believed you were a genuine threat to Vought's stability, this conversation would end quickly. You have kill teams on standby. Red Skull acknowledged without looking away from the display. 3 teams within the building, 2 more at nearby locations. You have also likely contacted Homelander with some coded phrase that would trigger his protective instincts. He finally turned. Skullface impassive. But you have not activated them. What? Curiosity, Stan replied. And recognition of opportunity. You're correct that our model is showing strain. Starlight's defection damaged us. The Stormfront situation nearly destroyed us. Victoria Newman's exposure as a soup created political complications. We've spent 18 months in damage control. He sipped his whiskey. You represent either a catastrophic threat or a novel solution. I'm still determining which. You wish to weaponize me, Red Skull said. Use my ideology as a tool too. Restore control over your soups. Give them purpose beyond profit, as I suggested to Homelander. But channel that purpose toward Vought's goals. Something like that. Red Skull laughed. That same harsh, humorless sound from the previous night. You still think of me as an asset to be managed. This is your weakness, Mr. Edgar. You are brilliant at controlling individuals, but you do not understand movements. Ideologies. True. Belief. He approached the windows, looking down at the city with the contemplative air of a conqueror planning siege strategies. I did not survive 70 years by being someone else's weapon. Hydra endured because it was an idea, not an organization. Cut off 1 head, 2 more grow back, not because of structure, but because of conviction. And you believe you can create that conviction here? Stan's tone carried polite skepticism. I believe it already exists, Red Skull countered. Your Stormfront proved that. She built a following based on crude supremacy. And even her exposure did not eliminate her supporters, it merely drove them underground. Imagine what I could accomplish with sophistication. with true ideological framework instead of social media manipulation. Stan Edgar set down his glass with deliberate precision. Let me be clear about something, Mr. Schmidt. I don't care about your ideology. I don't care about Hydra or master races or Nazi philosophy. What I care about is control. Vought's control over the soup population, the government, the narrative. If you can help me restore and strengthen that control, we can work together. If you threaten it. He left the sentence unfinished. Understood. Red Skull turned from the window. Then let us discuss terms. I require resources, laboratory space, personnel, access to Compound V samples. In exchange, I will provide you with something Vought has never had: soups with genuine discipline, purpose-driven rather than profit-driven. A hierarchy based on ideology, not quarterly earnings. You want to recreate Hydra within Vought's structure. I want to show you what your soups could be if you stopped treating them as celebrities and started treating them as soldiers. Red Skull's voice carried absolute conviction. Homelander is your perfect example. Limitless power, zero discipline. He craves approval because you engineered that need into him as a control mechanism. But addiction is a weak form of control. It creates dependency. Yes, but also resentment. Eventually, every addict either overdoses or seeks freedom from their addiction. Stan Edgar's expression remained neutral, but his mind was racing through implications, calculating risks and benefits with the cold precision that had made him Vought's most successful CEO. Red Skull wasn't wrong about Homelander. The soup was becoming increasingly unstable, harder to manage. Last month he'd killed a protester and Vought had to spend $8 million making it disappear. The month before, he'd threatened to laser Stan during a budget meeting. What exactly are you proposing? Stan asked carefully. Red Skull pulled up a section of the holographic display showing Vought's failed soups, the ones terminated. The unstable ones kept sedated in secure facilities. The ones too violent or unpredictable for public deployment. You discard what you cannot market. I would rehabilitate them, not for cameras, but for purpose. Build a division of soups loyal not to public opinion or corporate structure, but to ideology. A true hierarchy where strength and conviction determine rank. A fascist soup army, Stan said flatly. A disciplined force, Red Skull corrected. Your problem, Mr. Edgar, is that you have created gods and then asked them to be servants. This breeds resentment. But give them something to believe in. A vision of themselves as superior beings with superior responsibilities. And you transform resentment into loyalty. He manipulated the display, highlighting several soups. This one, Tech Knight, retired due to mental instability. In my assessment, not mentally ill, simply given power without purpose. This one, Soldier Boy, kept on ice because he is too violent. Too violent for what? Marketing? Give him an army to lead and watch him become your greatest asset. Soldier Boy is clinically insane and violently homophobic, Stan pointed out. But useful, if properly directed, Red Skull countered. You judge them by civilian standards. I judge them by military ones. And by military standards. You have an arsenal of weapons you refuse to deploy because they do not smile appropriately. Stan Edgar stood, walking to the window to stand beside Red Skull. Two men looking down at a city, each seeing different futures. You realize that what you're describing would fundamentally alter Vought's business model. We've spent 80 years building the mythology of soups as helpers, protectors, aspirational figures. You're suggesting we reveal them as what they actually are: superior beings who tolerate humanity's existence. I am suggesting you stop lying and start leading, Red Skull said. The mythology is crumbling regardless. Starlight exposed your lies. The boys continue their crusade. Public opinion shifts. You cannot maintain the illusion indefinitely. He turned to face Stan directly. But you can get ahead of the narrative. Redefine superiority not as service, but as responsibility. Not as protection, but as guidance. Transform Vought from a company that markets soups into a movement that empowers them. While ensuring they remain under Vought's control, Stan added. While ensuring they remain under our control. Red Skull corrected with a skull smile. Shared vision creates shared power. Mr. Edgar, I do not wish to destroy what you have built. I wish to perfect it. Stan Edgar studied the Nazi from another dimension, calculating probabilities and risks. Red Skull was dangerous, undoubtedly. Ideological zealots always were. But he was also offering a solution to Vought's growing problems with soup management. And if the situation became untenable, well, Stan Edgar had contingencies for everything. I'll give you access to one facility, Stan said finally. Low-level soups only. Nothing that could threaten Vought's primary assets. You have 6 months to prove your concept. If your disciplined force shows promise, we'll discuss expansion. And Homelander? Red Skull asked. Homelander remains my responsibility, Stan said firmly. You can advise him, even train him if he's willing. But operational control stays with me. He's too valuable to risk on experimental ideology. Agreed. Red Skull extended his hand, the one without the cosmic cube fragment. I believe this is the beginning of a productive partnership, Mr. Edgar. Stan shook it, his grip firm, his eyes cold. Don't make me regret this, Mr. Schmidt. Regret is for those who fail, Red Skull replied. I have not failed in 70 years. I do not intend to start now. That evening, in the shitty basement apartment that served as the boys' headquarters, Butcher spread photos across a table. Hydra symbols, German text, recruitment flyers found in 3 different boroughs. Worked his laptop, tracing digital footprints. Frenchie cleaned weapons with the loving care of a man who'd spent his youth fighting actual fascists in Marseille. Kimiko watched the photos with the intensity of someone who understood, without words, exactly what kind of evil they represented. So let me get this straight, said, looking up from his screen. Actual Nazis from another dimension have arrived in our world, are setting up shop in New York, and are possibly connected to Vought. When you say it like that, it sounds mental, Butcher admitted, pouring himself whiskey from a bottle that was more empty than full. But yeah, that's about the size of it. Frenchie stopped cleaning his rifle. Hydra. I know this name. From stories. Captain America's enemies. Super science, occult experiments. Genetic supremacy. He looked at Butcher with unusual seriousness. Mon ami, if this is real, if actual Hydra is here, this is worse than Homelander. Nothing's worse than Homelander, Butcher insisted. Homelander is a narcissistic child with laser eyes, Frenchie countered. Dangerous, yes, but ultimately, selfish, self-interested. Hydra is ideology, organization, purpose. A narcissist can be manipulated. True believers cannot. Kimiko signed something rapid. Frenchie translated. She says the symbols in these photos are authentic. World War II-era designs, not modern reproductions. Someone went to effort to recreate them exactly. Which means whoever's running this show is either a history buff or the genuine article. Concluded. He pulled up something on his laptop, turning it so the others could see. And I found something else. Vought's been quietly moving resources. Lab equipment, personnel files, medical supplies. All going to a facility in New Jersey that's not on any official documentation. The transfers started yesterday morning, right after that power surge. At the tower, Butcher leaned over the laptop, studying the data with the focus of a man who'd made hunting Vought's secrets his life's purpose. They're setting up something new, something they want kept quiet even by their fucked up standards. A new soup program? Suggested. Or an old one, Frenchie said quietly. The Nazis were obsessed with creating superior humans. Vought was founded by a Nazi scientist, and now actual Hydra arrives, and Vought immediately starts a secret project? He shook his head. This is not coincidence, Amos. Butcher straightened, jaw set with grim determination. Right. Here's what we're doing. Keep tracking those supply movements. Find me that New Jersey facility. Frenchie, Kimiko, get your gear together. We're going hunting. He looked at each of them in turn. Homelander's bad enough. But Homelander with Nazi friends? That's the kind of nightmare that ends with camps and ovens, yeah? We stop this now before it starts. And if we find actual interdimensional Nazis? Asked. Butcher smiled without humor, pulling his favorite crowbar from where it leaned against the wall. Then we introduce them to the only thing I respect about modern America, our commitment to killing fascist cunts. Worked in the 40s. It'll work now. Kimiko signed something. Frenchie translated with a grim smile. She says she's been wanting to kill Nazis since she was a child. Dreams do come true. They gathered their weapons in silence, each lost in thoughts of the fight ahead. None of them knew yet that Red Skull had already begun his work. that in a secret facility beneath a pharmaceutical company in Newark, he was reviewing files on Vought's failures and discards, selecting candidates for his first true Hydra cell. That Homelander had agreed to a training session tomorrow morning, not for combat, but for ideology. That Stan Edgar had just made the most dangerous gamble of his career, believing he could control a force that had survived Captain America, the Avengers, and 70 years of being hunted across dimensions. The boys prepared for war, but they were preparing for the wrong kind of enemy. They understood Vought's corruption, Homelander's psychosis, corporate evil. They didn't yet understand true ideological conviction, and that would make all the difference. The facility in Newark occupied 3 subterranean levels beneath a legitimate pharmaceutical company that Vought had acquired in the 1980s. Stan Edgar stood in the observation deck, watching through reinforced glass as Red Skull inspected his new laboratory with the critical eye of a scientist who'd spent decades perfecting human enhancement. Below, 23 soups sat in restraints. Not the famous ones, not the 7 or even the second-tier celebrities. These were Vought's mistakes. The too violent, the too unstable, the ones whose powers manifested in ways that made them unmarketable. A telekinetic who could only move organic matter and had accidentally liquefied his handler's brain. A strongman whose rage issues resulted in 17 civilian casualties during a botched rescue. A pyrokinetic who heard voices. A speedster whose metabolism required him to consume human flesh. Vought's dirty little secrets, kept sedated and locked away where they couldn't damage the brand. Red Skull walked among them like a general inspecting troops, studying each one with clinical detachment. You drug them, he observed, noting the 4 lines. Suppress their powers, dull their minds. We contain them, Stan corrected through the intercom. They're dangerous. They are wasted potential. Red Skull stopped before a massive soup, 8 feet tall, muscles like corded steel, with bone protrusions jutting from his shoulders and spine. The file designation read, Malformation, 7. The man's eyes were vacant, drool sliding from his slack mouth. This one, what is his story? Stan pulled up the file on a tablet. Test subject from the 1990s. Compound, V combined with experimental growth hormones, resulted in increased size and strength, but severe cognitive damage and uncontrollable aggression. 27 kills before we contained him. Kept sedated for 18 years. And you see only a liability. Red Skull circled the massive soup, that skull face betraying nothing. I see a soldier who was never given orders. Cognitive damage can be managed with proper conditioning. Aggression can be channeled through discipline. He moved to the next, a woman whose file read, Psyche, 12, her body covered in self-inflicted scars. And this one, telepathic with no off switch, Stan explained. Hears every thought within a 100-yard radius simultaneously. Multiple suicide attempts. Currently on enough antipsychotics to keep her comatose. Torture, Red Skull said simply. You give them power to hear thoughts, but no training to filter them. Then wonder why they go mad. He looked up at the observation window, though he couldn't see Stan through the one-way glass. This is your greatest crime, Mr. Edgar. Not the corruption or the lies. Those are simply business. Your crime is wasting perfection. You create gods and then lobotomize them because they fail to smile on command. Stan Edgar's voice remained level through the intercom. Can you fix them? Fix implies they are broken, Red Skull replied. Moving to a third soup, this one appearing normal except for the black veins visible beneath, pale skin and eyes that glowed, faintly red even through the sedation. The file read Infection 4. They are simply raw, unrefined, like steel that requires tempering. He paused. But yes, I can make them useful, not as celebrities, as weapons. How long? Red Skull considered the question, calculating variables, with the precision of someone who'd conducted countless human experiments across multiple timelines. 3 months for initial conditioning, 6 months for full integration. They will never be suitable for public consumption, but they will be loyal, disciplined, and effective. He turned to face the observation window. However, I require certain freedoms in my methodology. My techniques are not pleasant to observe. I don't care about pleasant, Stan said. I care about results. And containment. These soups don't leave this facility until I'm convinced they're controllable. Agreed. Red Skull smiled his terrible smile. Shall we begin? Stan pressed a button. The sedatives in the IVs stopped flowing. Gas vents in the ceiling released a stimulant compound that would bring the soups back to consciousness. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll be watching, Mr. Schmidt. Impress me. Red Skull removed his coat, revealing the SS uniform beneath, authentic, preserved across dimensions, a statement of absolute commitment to ideology. From his pocket, he withdrew the cosmic cube fragment. It pulsed with crimson energy, casting dancing shadows across the stark white walls of the containment chamber. Gentlemen, ladies, his voice carried easily through the chamber as the first soups began to stir, consciousness returning in confused, painful waves. My name is Johann Schmidt. In my world, I was called Red Skull. I led HYDRA, the greatest organization humanity has ever produced. We believed in purity of purpose, hierarchy of strength, the natural right of the superior to rule the inferior. The massive soup, Malformation 7, groaned, his enormous muscles tensing against restraints designed to hold someone with 50 tons of strength. Red Skull approached him without fear. You were told you were mistakes, failures, things to be hidden and drugged and forgotten. Red Skull's skull face was inches from the soup's confused, bovine features. But I see warriors, instruments of will, the strong who were punished for being strong. He placed his hand, the one with the cube fragment, against the soup's forehead. The cube flared. The soup's eyes widened, then focused with sudden, terrible clarity. The cognitive damage didn't disappear, the cube couldn't undo years of neurological trauma, but it imposed structure over chaos, order over confusion. The soup's slack expression hardened into something like military attention. You understand me, Red Skull said. Not a question. Yes, sir. The words came slowly. Unpracticed, but they came. Clear. Intentional. Stan Edgar leaned forward in the observation deck, eyes narrowed with intense focus. Whatever the cube had done, it had bypassed 18 years of sedation and cognitive damage in seconds. Red Skull moved to the next soup. The telepath, Psyche, 12, was starting to wake, her face already contorting with pain as thoughts from everyone in the building crashed into her unshielded mind. She screamed, a raw, animal sound of pure psychic agony. Peace, Red Skull commanded, touching the cube to her temple. The screaming stopped. The woman's eyes opened, clear and focused for the first time in years. I can hear them still, but they are organized, structured, like files in a cabinet instead of. She looked at Red Skull with something between gratitude and terror. What did you do to me? I gave you order, Red Skull replied. The voices will always be there, but now you control them, rather than they controlling you. With training, you will become the most dangerous intelligence asset I have ever commanded. He moved through the chamber systematically, touching each soup with the cube, not healing them. The cube's power was limited, stretched thin across dimensional barriers, but imposing enough order on their fractured minds to make them functional, controllable, ready for conditioning. In the observation deck, Stan Edgar watched with the calculating focus of a man witnessing a potential revolution in soup management. Everything Vought had done relied on creating soups young, conditioning them from childhood, managing them through psychological manipulation and public opinion. But Red Skull was demonstrating something different, the ability to take even Vought's worst failures and transform them into functional assets through sheer force of ideology and limited reality manipulation. It was terrifying. It was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of breakthrough that could either save Vought or destroy everything Stan had built. Impressive, Stan said through the intercom once Red Skull had finished his circuit. Though I notice you're using the cube. What happens when that runs out? The cube merely opens the door, Red Skull explained. Standing in the center of the chamber, surrounded by 23 newly aware soups. I provide the structure they will follow. Afterward, watch. He turned to address the soups directly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You have been lied to, told you are broken, told you are dangerous, told you must be contained for the safety of others. He paused. This is all true. You are dangerous. But danger is not weakness. It is strength that your captors feared. The Supes were listening now, truly listening. Some with dawning comprehension, others with the desperate hunger of people who'd been told they were worthless and were now being offered value. Vought created you to be celebrities, products, mascots. Red Skull's voice grew stronger, more passionate, the voice of a true believer converting the faithless. But you failed at that false purpose. And so they locked you away, drugged you, forgot you. They wasted you. He raised his arms, encompassing them all. But I see what you truly are. You are warriors. Weapons. The strong who were punished for refusing to be weak. And I offer you redemption, not through service to those who fear you, but through embracing what you are. Who are you? The pyrokinetic asked, his voice rough from years of sedation. I am your liberation, Red Skull replied. I am Johann Schmidt, founder of HYDRA. In my world, we believe that the strong were meant to lead and the weak meant to follow. That genetic superiority conferred natural authority. That power without purpose was waste, but power with ideology was destiny. He looked at each of them in turn. You have power. I will give you purpose. And together, we will show this world what disciplined superiority truly means. You're a Nazi, the telepath said flatly, her newfound mental clarity letting her read the insignia on his uniform, the ideology in his thoughts. I am a National Socialist, Red Skull corrected without shame. The term Nazi is a dismissal, used by those who cannot counter the ideology, so they demonize the messenger. Yes, I believe in hierarchy, in genetic destiny, in the natural right of the superior to rule. These beliefs made me enemy of weak men who feared strength. Captain America, the Avengers, they defeated me not through superior ideology, but through superior numbers and fortune. And now you want us to be your new HYDRA. The massive Supe, Malformation 7, rumbled, his voice slow but clearer than it had been in nearly 2 decades. I want you to be something more than sedated failures in a basement. Red Skull countered. Vought offers you nothing but imprisonment. I offer you identity, structure, brotherhood, a place where your power is asset, rather than liability, where your violence is not sin but tool, where you need not apologize for being what you are. Silence in the chamber. Stan Edgar watched, noting which Supes were leaning forward, which were pulling back. Red Skull had them divided already, some repulsed by the naked fascism, others seduced by the promise of purpose. Here is what I offer, Red Skull continued. 3 months of training. Not performance training, combat training, discipline training, ideological education. You will learn to control your powers through structure rather than sedation. You will learn your place in a hierarchy, based not on marketability, but on strength and loyalty. And at the end of 3 months, you will have a choice: return to sedation and imprisonment, or join me in building something greater than Vought has ever imagined. And if we refuse now? Asked a Supe with 3 eyes, his file designation Mutation 19. Then you return to sleep, Red Skull said simply. No punishment, no coercion, but you will spend the rest of your existence wondering what you might have become if you had the courage to embrace your nature. The telepathic woman, Psyche, 12, laughed bitterly. This is a pitch. You're actually giving us a fucking pitch like we're potential employees. Why not? Red Skull's lipless mouth curved. Slavery creates resentment. Choice creates loyalty. I do not want slaves. I want believers. He looked up at the observation window again. Mr. Edgar's greatest mistake was thinking control through fear and addiction was sufficient. But true power comes from willing service to ideology. I do not want you to serve me because you must. I want you to serve because you understand that together, we are the future of this species. In the observation deck, Stan Edgar made a note on his tablet. Subject demonstrates charisma and manipulation skills at expert level. Potential for cult of personality. Monitor carefully. So what's it going to be? Red Skull addressed them all. Sleep and safety? Or purpose and risk? The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then the massive Supe, Malformation 7, spoke in his slow, rumbling voice. I have slept for 18 years. I would like to wake up. I'm in, said the pyrokinetic quickly. Fuck Vought. Fuck their sedatives. I'll listen to what you have to say. The telepath hesitated longest, her clear eyes studying Red Skull with the intensity of someone who could literally read his conviction. Finally, your ideology is toxic, destructive. Everything you believe is poison. She paused. But you're right that I've been wasted here. I'll train. I'll listen. That doesn't mean I'll follow. Understood, Red Skull said with a slight nod of respect. Honest doubt is more valuable than false faith. You are dismissed to skepticism. One by one, the Supes agreed. Some enthusiastically, others grudgingly, a few with obvious reservations. But within 15 minutes, all 23 had chosen consciousness over sedation, training over imprisonment. Red Skull turned to face the observation window directly. Mr. Edgar, we have our volunteers. I request 3 months of uninterrupted time with my students. No monitoring, no interference, no oversight. Absolutely not, Stan replied immediately. Observation continues. For everyone's safety. Very well. Red Skull smiled. Then observe. Watch what discipline and ideology can accomplish. Where your profits and marketing failed. In 3 months, I will give you a force more loyal and effective than anything in Vought's current roster. He paused. Including your precious 7. Stan Edgar ended the intercom connection and sat back in his chair, mind racing through implications and contingencies. Red Skull was dangerous, more dangerous than he'd initially assessed. The ideology was one thing. Every organization had an ideology of some kind. But the true threat was the man's absolute conviction, combined with tactical brilliance and the Cosmic Cube's reality-warping powers. He pulled out his phone and sent a single encrypted message to a very specific contact. Project Genesis. Status? The reply came within seconds. Operational in 48 hours. Standing by for your authorization. Stan smiled slightly. Project Genesis, Vought's ultimate contingency. A collection of protocols, assets, and weapons designed to neutralize any Supe who became an uncontrollable threat, including Homelander, including these new recruits, including, if necessary, a dimensional Nazi with a Godstone. Red Skull thought he was building an army, but Stan Edgar was 3 steps ahead, ensuring that army would have a leash, and if the leash failed, a kill switch. In the chamber below, Red Skull had already begun the first lesson, his voice carrying the weight of 70 years' conviction. Lesson 1. Understand that power without purpose is merely chaos. You have chaos. I will give you purpose. And together, we will reshape this world. The Supes listened, some eagerly, some warily, all of them hungry for something Vought had never offered. A reason to exist beyond containment and fear. And in that hunger, Red Skull saw the raw material of his new HYDRA. Huey Campbell sat in a stolen van 3 blocks from the Newark pharmaceutical facility, monitoring radio frequencies while trying not to think about the fact that they were hunting actual interdimensional Nazis. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the equipment, partly from adrenaline, partly from the chronic anxiety that came with being the least superhuman member of a team that fought superhumans. Anything? asked from the driver's seat, binoculars trained on the facility's entrance. Encrypted communications, Huey replied, headphones pressed tight. Military grade. And, shit, some of it's in German. Frenchie, can you? Frenchie leaned over from the back, listening for a moment. His expression darkened. Hydra protocols. Code phrases from World War II operations. Hail HYDRA confirmations. Unit designations. He pulled back, looking at Butcher. Mon ami, this is real. Not cosplayers or Vought marketing. Actual HYDRA. Butcher sat in the back beside Kimiko, cleaning his pistol with methodical precision. Right. So we've got Nazi super scientists in a Vought facility, probably doing fucked up experiments on God knows what. Standard Tuesday, really. This isn't funny, Butcher, said seriously. Hydra in the comics? They had cosmic cubes, super soldier serums, advanced weapons that made Stark Tech look like children's toys. If even half that shit is real, then we're fucked either way. So might as well have a laugh about it. Butcher racked the slide on his pistol. We fought Homelander, survived Stormfront, killed Translucent in his invisible cunt skin. We'll manage. Kimiko signed something sharp and angry. Frenchie translated. She says Nazis deserve no jokes. Only bullets. Agreed, Butcher said. Which is why we're going in tonight. Huey, how many guards? Huey pulled up thermal imaging on a laptop jury-rigged to scan the building. 12 on the perimeter. Standard VOT security. But there's something weird in the sublevels, heat signatures that don't match human patterns. Too large, too irregular. Either equipment malfunction or soups. Finished grimly. How many? 20 plus. All in one chamber. And 2 signatures in an observation room above them. One normal, one. Huey frowned. One's running cold. Like hypothermia level cold. That's not normal. Red Skull, Frenchie said quietly. In the comics, the cube's power sometimes manifested as cold. Reality warping draws heat from surrounding space. Butcher stood, checking his weapons. Right. Here's the play. Frenchie, Kimiko, you're with me. We go in quiet, find out what they're doing with those soups, document everything. Huey, you stay with the van. Monitor communications. Be ready to extract us if this goes sideways. When? Corrected. When it goes sideways. Optimism. I like it. Butcher grabbed his signature crowbar. If we're not out in 30 minutes. Assume we're dead and take everything we've got to the CIA. They won't believe you. But at least it'll be on. Record that we tried to warn them. Before the Fourth Reich kicked off in Jersey, Huey watched them prepare. That familiar knot of fear and inadequacy tightening in his stomach. Butcher, if they've really got a cosmic cube, then we're very politely going to not touch it, document its existence, and let someone with actual superpowers deal with it. Butcher interrupted. We're not heroes, Huey. We're documentarians with crowbars. Remember that, and we might survive the night. Frenchie loaded his rifle with armor-piercing rounds, the expensive ones they saved for soups with enhanced durability. Kimiko flexed her fingers, the healing factor already accelerating her metabolism in preparation for violence. They'd done this dance dozens of times. Infiltrate VOT facilities. Expose their crimes, survive by luck and desperation. But as Butcher led them into the darkness toward the pharmaceutical building, even he felt the weight of wrongness settling over the operation. They'd fought VOT's corporate evil, Homelander's psychotic narcissism, Stormfront's social media fascism. This felt different, older, purer in its malevolence. They were about to confront something that had survived fighting Captain America. The boys were tough, resourceful, and absolutely committed to killing soups. But they were still just humans, with guns and anger. Sometimes that wasn't enough. Inside the facility's sublevels, Red Skull stood before his 23 recruits, now arranged in military formation. They'd been conscious for 6 hours, receiving rapid conditioning through a combination of the cube's influence, hypnotic suggestion, and simple, brutal clarity. Power is not evil, Red Skull lectured, pacing before them like a drill sergeant. It's simply IS. A gun is not moral or immoral, it is a tool. You are weapons who have been told that being weapons is wrong. This is the fundamental lie VOT uses to control you. The massive soup, Red Skull had begun calling him Goliath, nodded slowly. They said I was monster. For being strong. Because your strength threatened their control, Red Skull confirmed. Understand this. Those who preach equality do so because hierarchy threatens them. They tell the strong to restrain themselves not for morality, but for safety of the weak. It is the slave's philosophy masquerading as virtue. The telepath, Red Skull had designated her. Oracle raised her hand with military precision. Question, sir. If we embrace being weapons, who wields us? We escape VOT's control only to become your weapons instead. Excellent question. Red Skull stopped pacing, facing her directly. The answer is simple. You wield yourselves. I do not offer slavery. I offer structure. In HYDRA, hierarchy is based on capability and loyalty. You follow orders because the orders come from those who have proven themselves superior in judgment and vision, not because of contracts or marketing, but because strength recognizes strength. He looked at them all. I lead because I have survived 70 years fighting gods. You follow because you recognize that my vision offers you more than sedation ever could. But if any of you believe you can lead better than I can, you may challenge. Hydra respects strength, not seniority. You'd let us challenge you? The pyrokinetic, now called Prometheus, asked skeptically. I would kill you, Red Skull said matter-of-factly. But I would respect the attempt. Cowardice is punished. Courage is rewarded. Even courage that challenges me. In the observation deck, Stan Edgar made another note. Subject encourages independent thinking within hierarchical framework, more sophisticated than expected, potentially destabilizing to Vought's compliance-based model. Red Skull continued. Today, we begin combat training. Not performance combat for cameras. Real combat for war. You will learn to use your powers as weapons, not spectacles. Goliath, he turned to the massive soup. You will learn to kill efficiently, not messily. Prometheus, you will learn precision fire, not wild burning. Oracle, you will learn to weaponize thoughts, not be victimized by them. War against who? Asked Mutation 19, the three-eyed soup who'd been designated Argus. Red Skull smiled. Against those who would keep you imprisoned. Against those who profit from your servitude. Against Vought. He paused deliberately. When Mr. Edgar has extracted all the value from our partnership that he requires, and decides we have become too dangerous to control. The soup stirred, uneasy. Oracle's eyes widened. You know he's watching. You know he's planning to kill us. Of course, Red Skull said calmly. Mr. Edgar is brilliant, ruthless, and thinks 3 steps ahead. He believes he is using me to solve his soup management problem, while maintaining kill switches and contingencies, to eliminate us if we become threats. He looked directly at the observation window. What he does not understand is that I have fought enemies far more competent than corporate executives, the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., Captain America himself. I have survived because I am always 4 steps ahead, not 3. In the observation deck, Stan Edgar's expression remained neutral, but his hand moved unconsciously to his phone. So yes, Red Skull continued, we train for war, not against civilians or heroes or even criminals. We train for war against Vought itself, because eventually, inevitably, they will try to kill us. And when they do, his lipless grin was terrible. We will demonstrate what disciplined superiority truly means. Goliath raised his massive hand. Permission to speak, sir? Granted. If we know they'll try to kill us, why not escape now? Because I am not finished with them yet, Red Skull replied. Mr. Edgar provides resources, equipment, and access to Vought's infrastructure. We use these tools to build strength. When we are ready, when you are trained, and loyal and understand your purpose, then we leave. On our terms, not his. He looked at each soup. Patience and discipline win wars. Rage and desperation lose them. Remember this. The soups nodded, absorbing the lesson. Red Skull had been working on them for only hours. But already he'd accomplished what Vought never could, given them something to believe in beyond fear and containment. It was toxic ideology, built on hate and supremacy. But it was ideology nonetheless. Structure for the structureless. Purpose for the purposeless. Now, Red Skull said, we begin. Goliath, Prometheus, to the training circle. You will spar. No killing, but full power. Show me what you can do when not sedated. The 2 soups moved to a reinforced area of the chamber. Goliath, 8 feet of muscle and bone protrusions. Prometheus, lean and tattooed, already wreathed in flames. They faced each other with the intensity of warriors rather than the showmanship of celebrities. Red Skull raised his hand. Begin. They clashed with shocking brutality. Goliath's fist created a shockwave that cracked concrete. Prometheus's fire turned the air into superheated plasma. No restraint, no performance. Just 2 powerful beings finally allowed to unleash their full capabilities. Red Skull watched with satisfaction. This was what Vought had buried. This was what he would weaponize. Above them, Stan Edgar watched through reinforced glass and wondered if his contingencies were sufficient. And outside the building, in the darkness, the boys were about to discover they'd walked into something far more dangerous than a standard Vought facility. Butcher, Frenchie, and Kimiko breached the facility's perimeter through a loading dock, bypassing security with practiced efficiency. Frenchie's electronics expertise got them through the first 2 doors. Kimiko's silent violence eliminated 3 guards before they could raise an alarm. Butcher's brutal pragmatism ensured no one would wake up to sound it. They moved through sterile corridors toward the sublevels, following Huey's directions through earpieces. Down 2 more floors, Huey's voice crackled. The heat signatures are getting more active. I think something's happening. Course it is, Butcher muttered. Nothing's ever quiet when we show up. They found a service elevator and descended, weapons ready. The doors opened to reveal a corridor lined with observation windows. Through one, they could see the chamber below and froze. 23 soups. Not restrained, not sedated, fully conscious and engaged in coordinated combat training. Two giants fighting in a reinforced circle while others watch from military formation. And in the center, directing everything, a figure in an SS uniform with a skull for a face. Murd, Frenchie breathed. It is him. It is actually Red Skull. Butcher raised his phone, taking video. Huey, you getting this? Holy shit, Huey's voice came through. Butcher, those are the soups from Vought's termination list. The ones that are supposed to be dead or permanently contained. How are they? They're being trained, Butcher said grimly, watching Red Skull correct. Prometheus's fire technique with the precision of a military instructor, turned into proper soldiers. This isn't just Hydra showing up. This is Hydra rebuilding inside Vought. Kimiko pointed urgently at another observation window. Through it, they could see Stan Edgar sitting in a chair, watching everything with his characteristic calm. Edgar's in on it. M's voice came through the earpiece, having tapped into Butcher's video feed. Jesus Christ. Vought's CEO is working with actual Nazis. Explains a lot, really, Butcher said. Vought was founded by a Nazi scientist. Guess they're just getting back to their roots. He continued filming, capturing Red Skull's lecture. The soup's military precision, the casual fascism permeating every word. Then Oracle, the telepath, suddenly stiffened. Her three cleared eyes snapped toward the observation window where the boys were hidden. Sir, she said urgently, we have visitors. 3 humans, heavily armed. There, she gasped. They're the boys. The ones who hunt soups. They're recording us. Red Skull's head turned slowly toward the window. Even through the reinforced glass, Butcher felt the weight of that skeletal gaze. Fuck, Butcher said eloquently. Time to go, lads. But the elevator doors behind them had already sealed shut. Emergency lights activated, and Red Skull's voice came through speakers in the corridor, speaking English with that thick German accent. William Butcher. Frenchie. Kimiko. I have read your files. Impressive work, hunting Vought's monsters. But you are now in MY facility, observing MY operation. And I cannot allow you to leave with what you have seen. The chamber doors opened. Goliath stepped out. 8 feet of enhanced muscle, no longer sedated or confused. Just focused. Behind him came Prometheus, wreathed in flame. Then Oracle, then Argus. Then more, a wave of soups who'd been Vought's worst failures. Now moving with military precision. Frenchie raised his rifle. We cannot fight this many. No shit, Butcher agreed, backing toward the sealed elevator. Huey, we need extraction now. Working on it. Huey's voice was frantic. The whole building's on lockdown. Vought's system is fighting me. Red Skull appeared in the corridor, walking calmly through his soldiers. You will not escape, Mr. Butcher. But I am not unreasonable. Lower your weapons. You will not be harmed, merely detained until I decide what to do with you. He paused. Or continue pointing guns at my students and learn what discipline soups can accomplish when not restrained by marketing departments. Butcher's mind raced through options. They had armor-piercing rounds, but not enough for 23 soups. Kimiko could heal, but not from being vaporized by Prometheus. Frenchie was brilliant, but brilliance didn't stop 8 feet of muscle from crushing your skull. They were fucked, and Red Skull knew it. I'll give you 10 seconds to decide, the Nazi said pleasantly. 10, 9, 8. Butcher looked at Frenchie, at Kimiko, saw his own resignation reflected in their eyes. He lowered his gun. Smart choice, Red Skull said. Goliath, Oracle, escort. Our guests to holding. Gently. They are not enemies yet. Merely witnesses who require management. As the soups moved forward, Butcher caught one last glimpse of Stan Edgar through the observation window. The CEO was watching with that same neutral expression, already calculating how this complication fit into his larger strategy. The boys had come to document Hydra's arrival. Instead, they'd become its first prisoners. MM and Huey watched the video feed cut to static from the van, 3 blocks away from catastrophe. For 5 seconds, neither spoke. Then MM grabbed the steering wheel with white knuckles while Huey's hands flew across the keyboard, desperately trying to re-establish connection. Come on, Huey muttered, bypassing firewalls and encryption. Butcher, if you can hear me. Static. Dead air. The building's systems had locked them out completely. Fuck. Slammed his hand against the dashboard. We need to call someone. CIA, FBI, fuck. Call the army. Call Starlight. Call anyone. And tell them what? Huey's voice cracked with panic. That our team got captured by interdimensional Nazis inside a Vought facility that officially doesn't exist? They'll lock us up for psych evaluation before they investigate. Took a breath, forcing himself into tactical thinking. Grace Mallory. She's seen enough Vought horror to believe us. We call her, give her everything. Grace is deep cover in Moscow right now. Huey interrupted. It'll take her 12 hours minimum to mobilize anything. Butcher, Frenchie, and Kimiko don't have 12 hours. Then what's your plan, genius? Huey stared at the dead screens, mind racing through impossible options. Then his eyes landed on a contact in his phone, one he'd sworn he'd never use unless absolutely necessary. Annie. Starlight. His ex-girlfriend who was still technically part of the Seven. Still had access to Vought systems. Still had powers that could actually fight Supes. But calling her meant exposing her to Red Skull. Meant pulling her into something that could get her killed. Meant, we don't have time for your guilt spiral, said, reading his expression. Call her. Now. Or we're sending flowers to 3 funerals. Huey dialed. Annie January answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. Huey? It's 2 in the morning. What? Annie, I need your help. Butcher, Frenchie, and Kimiko are trapped in a Vought facility in Newark. Sublevel containment area. There are 20+ hostile Supes, and he swallowed hard. And there's a guy with them. Red Skull. From another dimension. He's got a cosmic cube, and he's building an army. And Stan Edgar is working with him. Huey slowed down. You're not making sense. I know how it sounds. His voice rose with desperation. But I'm sending you the video now. Watch it. Then tell me I'm crazy. 30 seconds of silence while Annie watched the footage. When she spoke again, her voice was tight. That's Stan Edgar in the observation room. And that's... She trailed off. Jesus Christ. Those are the terminated Supes. The ones that are supposed to be dead or permanently sedated. Huey, if this is real, it's real. And my friends are in there. I need you to. I'm on my way, Annie interrupted. Don't do anything stupid. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She hung up. Looked at Huey with grudging respect. Okay, so we've got 1 Supe on our side. Against 23 Vought rejects, a Nazi with a Godstone, and whatever killbot Stan Edgar has on standby. I'm sure it'll be fine. You got a better idea? Yeah. Run. Live to fight another day. Cut our losses. Huey met his eyes. You don't mean that. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his own weapons, checking ammunition with mechanical precision. No, I don't. Butcher's an asshole, but he's our asshole. We don't leave people behind. He looked at Huey seriously. But kid, you need to understand something. If this goes bad, if Red Skull really is what the comics say he is, we might all die tonight. You ready for that? Huey thought about Robin, exploded in A-Train's wake. About his father, killed by Vought's conspiracy. About every person he'd lost to Supes and their casual cruelty. I've been ready since A-Train ran through my girlfriend, he said quietly. Let's go get our people. In the holding cell beneath the facility, Butcher paced like a caged animal while Frenchie examined the walls for weaknesses and Kimiko tested the doors. Reinforcement with increasing frustration. The cell was designed to hold Supes, reinforced steel, power dampeners in the walls, no obvious exit points. This is bad, Frenchie said unnecessarily. Very, very bad. Thanks for that analysis, Frenchie, Butcher snapped. Here I thought being captured by Nazi super soldiers was a fucking picnic. We need to think strategically, Frenchie insisted. Red Skull wants something from us. Otherwise, why keep us alive? He could have had his Supes kill us immediately. Information, Butcher said, still pacing. He wants to know what we know, who we've told, what the boys have on Vought and his operation. He stopped, looking at the camera in the corner, which means he's going to interrogate us. And I've read about Nazi interrogation techniques. They're not pleasant. Kimiko signed something sharp. Frenchie translated. She says she survived worse than Nazis. Shining light liberation. Army did things that would make the SS look gentle. Comforting, Butcher muttered. He approached the camera directly, staring into it. Oi, Skullface. I know you're watching. Let's have a chat, yeah? Professional to professional. You want information, I want my freedom. I'm sure we can work something out like civilized cunts. For a moment, nothing. Then Red Skull's voice came through a speaker. William Butcher. The man who killed Translucent, exposed Compound V. Survived Homelander's personal attention. I have read your file with great interest. You are what my world would call Übermensch, superior, through will and determination, rather than genetic enhancement. Flattery. Nice. Butcher kept his voice casual despite the fear coiling in his gut. So what now? You torture us for information? Kill us to protect your secret Nazi club? Or maybe, and here's a wild thought, you let us go with a stern warning not to tell anyone about the fascist death cult you're building in Jersey. I'm considering several options, Red Skull replied. You understand that you represent a complication. You have video evidence of my operation, knowledge of my partnership with Mr. Edgar, and the resources to expose both. Standard protocol would be elimination. But, Butcher prompted, but you also represent opportunity, Red Skull continued. You have spent years fighting Vought's corruption, exposing their lies, hunting their soups. In many ways, Mr. Butcher, we share an enemy. Butcher laughed harshly. Oh, that's brilliant. The enemy of my enemy pitch. Let me guess, you're going to offer to help me kill Homelander in exchange for keeping quiet about your little Fourth Reich startup? Something like that, Red Skull confirmed. Though I suspect you will refuse on principle. You hate soups, but you hate Nazis more. Predictable. Boring. But perhaps, a pause, perhaps I can appeal to your pragmatism. You cannot stop what I am building. Even if you escape, even if you expose me. I have the Cosmic Cube. I have Vought's resources. I have Stan Edgar's cooperation. Your options are, die uselessly fighting me, or live usefully working with me. Working with you to do what? Frenchie interjected. Build master race? Create super soldier army? Conquer America? We know how this story ends, monsieur. You lose. You always lose. Do I? Red Skull's voice carried amusement. I survived Captain America. I survived the Avengers. I survived 70 years across multiple dimensions. I have been defeated, yes, but never destroyed. Like the organization I founded, cut off one head, two more grow back. Hydra endures because it is idea, not army. And what's the idea? Butcher demanded. What's the big vision that's supposed to make me overlook the whole Nazi thing? Hierarchy, Red Skull said simply. Natural order. The recognition that beings with power should rule, and those without should follow. You hunt soups because they abuse power through lack of discipline. I train soups to use power with purpose. We both recognize that current system, where corporations market godhood and masses worship false heroes, is broken. The difference is that I offer solution. Fascism isn't a solution, Frenchie said hotly. It's a disease. Fascinating perspective from a Frenchman, Red Skull replied. Tell me, Frenchie, how many terrorist organizations have you worked with? How many illegal weapons have you built? How many people have you killed in pursuit of your vendetta against soups? You judge my ideology while ignoring your own moral compromises. Frenchie's jaw clenched, but he had no response. Red Skull continued. I do not ask you to embrace National Socialism. I ask you to recognize reality. Soups exist. They are superior to normal humans in every measurable way. Vought's approach is to market them, while secretly controlling them through psychological manipulation and public opinion. My approach is to discipline them through ideology and military structure. Which is more honest? Which is more sustainable? Neither, Butcher said flatly. They're both systems of control, just different brands of the same fucking poison. Perhaps, Red Skull acknowledged. But poison is sometimes necessary medicine. You cannot eliminate soups. There are too many. They are too powerful. You cannot reform Vought. The corruption is too deep, the profits too high. Your only option is to replace their control with better control. More efficient. More honest about what it is. So that's the pitch, Butcher said. Help you build your Nazi soup army. And maybe you'll let me kill Homelander afterward. That about right. Essentially. Well, here's my counteroffer. Go fuck yourself with a cactus, you red-faced cunt. I've spent my life fighting soups, not joining them. And I sure as shit won't help a Nazi build an army, regardless of how efficient or honest it is. Silence from the speaker. Then Red Skull said quietly, I expected this response. Admirable, in its way. Stupid, but admirable. A pause. Very well. Since you refuse cooperation, you will remain imprisoned until I decide what to do with you. I would kill you now, but you may yet prove useful as leverage or examples. Oracle will periodically scan your minds to ensure you have told no one else about this facility. If she detects lies, I will know. The speaker clicked off. Butcher slammed his fist against the wall. Fuck. Fuck. We need escape plan, Frenchie said urgently. Huey and are still free. They will come for us. With what? Butcher demanded. 2 blokes in a van against 23 trained Supes and a Nazi with a godstone. They'll get themselves killed trying to rescue us. Kimiko signed something. Frenchie translated. She says that's what we would do for them. That's what family does. Butcher looked at both of them. Frenchie, who'd followed him into hell a dozen times, and Kimiko, who'd found purpose in their impossible crusade against Vought's evil. They were right. The boys didn't abandon each other. Even when it was stupid. Even when it was suicide. All right, Butcher said. We assume rescue's coming. When it does, we need to be ready to move fast. Frenchie, keep looking for weaknesses in this cell. Kimiko, conserve your energy. We might need your healing factor. And both of you. He met their eyes. If it comes down to it, if there's a choice between saving me or escaping yourselves, you run. That's an order. Non, Frenchie said simply. Kimiko signed her agreement with the refusal. Butcher smiled despite everything. Insubordinate cunts, the both of you. Above them, in the observation deck, Stan Edgar watched the camera feed with calculating focus. Red Skull's interrogation attempt had been interesting, offering alliance rather than torture, appealing to pragmatism rather than fear. Sophisticated. Also, ineffective. Stan picked up his phone and called Ashley. Activate Project Genesis. Full authorization. I want all assets operational within the hour. Sir, are you sure? Ashley's voice was even more panicked than usual. Project Genesis it's extreme. If the board finds out. The board answers to me, Stan interrupted coldly. And Red Skull is becoming too comfortable. Too confident. Time to remind him who actually controls Vought's resources. He paused. Also, there are confirmed reports that the boys have outside support incoming. Starlight is en route to the facility. Starlight? But she's about to be a very convenient test case for our new security protocols. Stan finished. Prepare the Genesis units. If Red Skull wants to play soldier with my rejects, he can deal with what happens when actual military hardware gets involved. He hung up and returned his attention to the screens. Red Skull was back in the training chamber, working with his Supes on coordinated assault tactics. The Nazi was good, Stan had to admit that. In 6 hours, he'd taken Vought's worst failures and turned them into something resembling an actual unit. But good wasn't enough. Stan Edgar had spent 20 years managing Homelander, the most powerful and unstable Supe on the planet. Red Skull might have survived Captain America, but he'd never faced someone who'd turned corporate management into an art form of controlled brutality. The Nazi thought he was building an army. Stan was about to show him he was really just assembling targets. Outside the facility, a streak of golden light descended from the sky. Starlight landed in the parking lot, power crackling around her hands, face set with determination. She had no idea she was walking into a 3-way conflict between Vought's CEO, an interdimensional Nazi, and a team of Supe hunters. But she was about to find out. The night was about to get much, much worse. Starlight approached the pharmaceutical building with every sense on high alert. She'd faced Stormfront, fought Homelander, survived Vought's corruption. But something about this felt different. Worse, the building looked innocuous enough from outside. Just another corporate facility. But her powers were already reacting to something beneath the surface. The ambient electricity in the area felt wrong. Disrupted. Like reality itself was slightly off frequency. MM's voice crackled through her earpiece. Starlight, we're reading massive power fluctuations inside the building. Whatever that cube thing is, it's throwing off every sensor we have. Got it, Annie replied, approaching the main entrance. I'm going in through the front. If they're expecting me, might as well not pretend otherwise. That's a terrible plan, Huey interjected from the van. You got a better one? Silence. That's what I thought. Starlight pushed through the entrance doors, finding the lobby empty. Security desk abandoned. Lights flickering overhead. Buildings evacuated. They knew I was coming. Of course they did. Came Stan Edgar's voice from speakers in the ceiling. Hello, Starlight. I'm disappointed, but not surprised to find you working with terrorists. Terrorists? Annie's voice was sharp. You're building a Nazi army in your basement, Stan. I'm pretty sure that makes you the terrorist. Perspective is everything, Miss January. But we can discuss semantics later. Right now, you have a choice. Leave immediately and forget what you've seen, or proceed downward and face consequences you are not prepared for. I'll take door number 2, Starlight said, moving toward the elevator. Where are you keeping them? Sublevel 3. Holding cell 7. Stan's voice carried that infuriating calm. I'm giving you their location. Annie, because I want you to understand something. I'm not the villain in this scenario. I'm containing a situation, and you're about to make it significantly worse. The elevator doors opened. Starlight stepped inside, power building in her hands, ready for ambush. You're working with Red Skull. Actual Nazi from another dimension. There's no scenario where you're not the villain. Red Skull is a consultant, Stan replied as the elevator descended. A dangerous one, admittedly, but manageable. I'm using his expertise to solve a problem. Unstable. Soups that Vought can't control or market. He provides discipline. I provide resources. Everyone benefits. Except the part where he's literally building HYDRA. And he shot back. Yes, which is why I have contingencies. The elevator shuddered. Stopped between floors. Emergency lights activated, bathing everything in red. Contingencies like trapping me in an elevator? Starlight's power flared brighter, ready to blast through the walls. Contingencies like Genesis units. The elevator walls retracted with hydraulic precision, revealing that she wasn't in an elevator shaft at all. She was in a deployment chamber, and surrounding her on all sides were 12 humanoid figures in matte black armor, armed with weapons she didn't recognize, moving with mechanical precision. What the hell are these? Starlight demanded. Adaptive soup killer androids, Stan explained almost academically. Project Genesis. Developed over 15 years using data from every soup encounter Vought has documented. They analyze powers in real time and adapt countermeasures. The more you use your abilities, the more effectively they neutralize them. One of the units raised its weapon, something between a rifle and an energy projector. A beam of concentrated darkness shot out, not attacking Starlight, but consuming the light around her. Her powers, which drew from ambient electrical and light sources, immediately began to flicker and fade. You built anti-soup robots, Annie said, horrified. Stan, do you have any idea how many ways this could go wrong? Fewer ways than leaving soups unmanaged, Stan replied. You wanted to see your friends? The Genesis units will escort you. Cooperate, and no one gets hurt. Resist. The units powered up in unison. 12 weapons trained on her from optimal firing positions. Well, you're durable, but you're not invincible. Starlight weighed her options. She could fight, maybe take down a few units, before they adapted fully to her powers. But that would alert everyone in the facility, trap her in a kill box, and leave her exhausted before reaching Butcher's team. Or she could play along, conserve her strength, find an opening. She lowered her hands. Fine, take me to them. Smart choice, Stan said. Genesis Alpha Squad. Escort Starlight to holding cell 7. Lethal force authorized. Only if she attacks first. The units moved with disturbing coordination, forming a perimeter around her as they marched deeper into the facility. Starlight filed away every detail, weapon configurations, movement patterns, the faint hum of whatever powered them. If she was going to fight these things, she'd need to understand them first. They passed through corridors lined with observation windows. Through one, she glimpsed the training chamber, and her breath caught. 20-plus soups, all supposedly dead or contained, moving in military formation under the direction of a figure whose skull face made her skin crawl with instinctive revulsion. Red Skull noticed her passing. Their eyes met across the reinforced glass. He smiled that lipless smile and offered a small, mocking salute. Starlight looked away, refusing to engage. They reached holding cell 7. The Genesis units maintained position as the door opened, revealing Butcher, Frenchie, and Kimiko inside. Annie, Huey's voice crackled in her earpiece. Oh, thank God, you made it. I'm here, she said quietly. But we have a problem. Butcher approached the cell's barrier, eyeing the Genesis units with professional assessment. Let me guess, Vought's built killer robots. Adaptive soup killer androids, Starlight corrected. Stan's insurance policy. Against Red Skull, probably. But also against any soup that steps out of line. Brilliant, Butcher said sourly. So we've got Nazis building a super soldier army, corporations building killer robots, and us three idiots stuck in the middle. Just another fucking day. Stan Edgar's voice came through the speakers again. Starlight, you have 5 minutes with your friends. Then the Genesis units escort you out of the facility. This is the only chance I'm giving you to leave peacefully. Annie ignored him, turning to Butcher. What did you find out? About Red Skull, Hydra, all of it. Butcher quickly summarized the cosmic cube. The terminated soups being retrained as soldiers. Red Skull's ideology combining Nazi supremacy with soup superiority. Stan Edgar's cold calculation that he could control it all. It's worse than we thought, Butcher concluded. Red Skull isn't just rebuilding HYDRA. He's building something new. Hydra adapted to this world. And Edgar thinks he's using the Nazi. But I'll bet you anything Skullface is 3 steps ahead. And if they work together? Annie asked, dreading the answer. Then Vought becomes something beyond a corrupt corporation. Frenchie said grimly. It becomes an ideological movement. Fascism with superhuman enforcers, corporate funding, and public legitimacy. Everything HYDRA wanted in our world. Everything the Nazis almost achieved, but with actual gods doing the enforcing. Kimiko signed urgently. Frenchie translated. She says we need to destroy both. Red Skull and Stan Edgar's operation. Kill them both before they finish what they're building. Easier said than done, Butcher muttered. We're in a cell, surrounded by killer robots. With an army of Nazi soups 1 floor up and an explosion rocked the building. Alarm screamed. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency reds. The Genesis units immediately shifted into defensive formation, weapons raising toward the ceiling as if expecting attack from above. Stan Edgar's voice came through the speakers. No longer calm. Red Skull. What have you done? Red Skull's reply was cold and satisfied. What I told you I would do. Mr. Edgar, I have learned what I needed from your facility. Your technology. Your protocols. Your Genesis unit specifications. Thank you, Oracle, for that particular telepathic acquisition. And now I am leaving. With my students. And you cannot stop me. Another explosion. Closer. The building shook. Through the speakers, they could hear chaos, shouting, weapons fire. The distinctive sounds of soups using powers at full capacity. Red Skull was staging a breakout. Fascinating, Butcher said, almost admiringly. The Nazi backstabbed the corporate executive. Did not see that coming. He waited until he had everything he needed, Frenchie realized. The training time, the resources, access to Vought's systems. He was never planning to stay under Edgar's control. This was always a hostile acquisition. Stan Edgar's voice returned, tight, with barely controlled rage. Genesis units. All squads converge on training chamber. Contain or terminate all hostile soups. Authorization code, Omega Black. Full lethal engagement. The Genesis units around Starlight immediately pivoted, rushing toward the sounds of combat. Their departure left the cell door unguarded. Butcher grinned savagely. Well, that's convenient. The door's still locked, Annie pointed out. But you're not. Butcher gestured to her. Blow the lock. We're getting out of here. And then what? Annie demanded. We're in the middle of a 3-way war between Vought's killer robots, Nazi super soldiers, and whatever the hell else is down here. Then we do what we always do, Butcher said, eyes gleaming with that particular mania that made him both effective and terrifying. We turn them against each other and survive the chaos. Come on, love. Where's your sense of adventure? Starlight looked at the cell door, at the boys, at the emergency lights painting everything in blood red. She thought about her principles, her commitment to doing things the right way, her belief that heroes didn't compromise with terrorists or Nazis, or another explosion, much closer, through the walls. They heard Goliath's roar as the massive soup tore through something substantial. Fuck it, Annie said, and blasted the cell door with enough concentrated light to melt the locking mechanism. The boys poured out, Butcher immediately grabbing weapons from a nearby emergency locker. Right. Frenchie, Kimiko, find us an exit. Huey, if you can hear me, start the van and be ready to move fast. Annie, he looked at her seriously. You still have time to leave. This is going to get ugly. War crimes ugly. Nazi hunting ugly. I'm not leaving you to die down here, Annie said firmly. Then welcome to the boys, Butcher said with a savage grin. Try not to get killed. It's terrible for team morale. They moved through corridors thick with smoke and chaos. Genesis units rushed past them, ignoring the humans to focus on soup targets. They heard combat ahead, Red Skull's trained soldiers fighting. Vought's adaptive androids in close-quarters warfare. Through an observation window, they saw the main chamber. Red Skull stood in the center, cosmic cube glowing in his palm, directing his 23 soups with military precision. Genesis units poured in from multiple entrances, weapons blazing with that strange darkness energy that neutralized soup powers. It was beautiful and terrible, too. Visions of controlled superhuman force, colliding with brutal efficiency. Goliath grabbed a Genesis unit and crushed it like a tin can. Prometheus's fire melted through 3 more. But the androids were adapting, their armor shifting to heat-resistant configurations, their weapons recalibrating to target specific physiological weaknesses. Oracle stood beside Red Skull, her telepathy identifying Genesis unit tactics before they could be deployed, giving Hydra's soups critical seconds of advance warning. They're losing, Frenchie observed. Red Skull's soups are powerful, but the Genesis units are designed specifically to kill them. They adapt too quickly. Good, Butcher said. Let them kill each other. We find Edgar, document everything, and blow this facility on our way out. With luck, we bury both problems in the rubble. Where is Edgar? Annie asked. As if in answer, a section of wall retracted, revealing Stan Edgar standing in a private corridor, flanked by more Genesis units. He was holding a tablet, calmly directing the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra. He saw them. His expression didn't change. Mr. Butcher, Stan said conversationally, as if they'd met at a cocktail party rather than in the middle of a war zone. I told you this situation was being contained. Yet here you are, loose and armed, about to make everything significantly worse. Funny thing about containment, Butcher replied, raising his weapon. It only works when you're the smartest person in the room. But you've got a Nazi who survived Captain America and a team of soup hunters who've been embarrassing you for years. How smart do you feel now, Edgar? Stan Edgar looked at his tablet, at the battle raging in the chamber, at the tactical calculations running across his screen. Then he looked back at Butcher with something that might have been respect. Smart enough to know when to cut losses, Stan said. He tapped something on his tablet. Facility self-destruct initiated. 10-minute countdown. That should be enough time for you to escape, Mr. Butcher, but not enough for Red Skull to extract all his assets. Warning klaxons blared. Emergency announcements echoed through speakers. Facility self-destruct activated. All personnel, evacuate immediately. 10 minutes to detonation. Butcher stared at Stan Edgar with dawning horror. You're going to blow up your own facility. Kill your own Genesis units. Bury everything rather than let Red Skull win. I'm erasing a mistake, Stan corrected. Red Skull, his Hydra experiment. The terminated soups, Project Genesis. All of it was interesting research. But the cost-benefit analysis no longer favors continuation. He looked at them calmly. Run, Mr. Butcher. You have approximately 9 minutes to clear the blast radius. I suggest you use them wisely. He turned and walked deeper into his private corridor, the Genesis units following. A blast door sealed behind him, cutting off pursuit. 9 minutes to detonation. Fuck. Butcher spun to the others. Move. Now. They ran. Behind them, in the training chamber, Red Skull heard the countdown and smiled grimly. So, Mr. Edgar chooses scorched earth rather than defeat. Predictable. He raised his voice to his soups. Hydra. Fighting retreat. Extract what you can. Leave nothing behind. The trained soups moved with the discipline he'd instilled, grabbing equipment and data, fighting their way toward exits while Genesis units tried to stop them. Starlight and the boys reached a stairwell, climbing frantically, as explosions began cooking off. Beneath them, Stan Edgar's final insurance. That nothing would survive. 5 minutes to detonation. They burst out of the building into the parking lot, lungs burning. Just as brought the van screaming up to the entrance. They piled in. Annie, Butcher, Frenchie, Kimiko, and floored it, tires shrieking as they raced away from the facility. Behind them, Red Skull emerged from a service entrance with 15 of his 23 soups. 8 had died fighting Genesis units or been lost in the chaos. But 15 survived, trained and loyal, carrying stolen equipment and data. The cosmic cube flared. A portal of crimson energy opened before them, not back to Red Skull's dimension, but to another location within this world. An escape route prepared weeks ago, because Johann Schmidt always had contingencies. Move, he commanded. His soups obeyed without hesitation, disappearing into the portal. Red Skull turned back to look at the facility one last time. Through a high window, he could see Stan Edgar watching from his private command center, already being evacuated by helicopter from the roof. Their eyes met across the distance. Red Skull offered a mocking salute, acknowledgement of a worthy enemy. Stan Edgar's expression remained neutral, but his hand moved, entering one final command on his tablet. The facility exploded with apocalyptic force. Fire and debris erupted skyward, consuming everything: Genesis units, remaining soups, laboratories, data servers, evidence. Stan Edgar was erasing the entire experiment, preferring total destruction to Red Skull's victory. The shockwave rocked the van. Fought to keep control as debris rained down around them. When they finally skidded to a stop 3 blocks away, they looked back to see a crater where the pharmaceutical building had been. Emergency vehicles were already converging, fire trucks, police, Vought cleanup crews. Holy shit, Huey breathed. Did we just witness Stan Edgar commit mass murder to cover up his Nazi collaboration? Asked. War crime, Frenchie corrected. That was a war crime. Butcher was staring at the destruction, mind racing through implications. Red Skull got out. I saw him open a portal. He's loose in our world now, with trained soups, and all the data he stole from Vought. And Stan Edgar just proved he'll burn everything down rather than lose control. Annie added, this isn't over. This is just beginning. In the van, surrounded by the aftermath of catastrophe, the boys realized they hadn't stopped either threat. They'd just witnessed both escape. Red Skull into the shadows to rebuild. Stan Edgar back to Vought Tower to spin this disaster into acceptable corporate narrative. The war between corporate evil and ideological evil had begun, and the boys were caught in the middle, with nothing but weapons, rage, and the terrible knowledge that this would get worse before it got better. 48 hours after the Newark facility explosion, Vought Tower's conference room buzzed with controlled panic. Ashley Barrett stood at the head of the table, her hands shaking as she pulled up damage control reports on the main screen. Around her sat department heads, PR managers, and legal advisors, everyone except Stan Edgar, who'd insisted on a separate meeting with someone else. The official story is holding, Ashley said, her voice cracking with exhaustion. Gas leak at a pharmaceutical research facility. Tragic accident. 14 employees confirmed dead, 8 missing and presumed dead. We've paid off the families, bought the city inspectors, and scrubbed all digital records connecting the facility to Vought. What about the boys? Asked the head of security. They were there. They have evidence. Circumstantial at best, the legal advisor replied. Video of soups in a facility that no longer exists. Claims about dimensional Nazis that sound like conspiracy theory. Leak counter-narratives, deepfakes, mental health concerns, the usual protocol. By next week, anyone who believes their story will be dismissed as a crackpot. And Red Skull? Someone asked nervously. Ashley's hands clenched. Unknown location. Unknown assets. Unknown plans. Mr. Edgar is handling that situation personally. Across town, in an abandoned subway station beneath Queens, Red Skull stood before his surviving 15 soups in what had once been a maintenance bay. The space was crude compared to Vought's facility, concrete walls, flickering fluorescent lights, makeshift sleeping areas. But it was secure, hidden, and most importantly, beyond Stan Edgar's immediate reach. We lost 8, Red Skull said, addressing his soldiers with military directness. Goliath, Prometheus, Argus, and 5 others died fighting Genesis units or were consumed in Edgar's scorched earth response. Their sacrifice bought us time to escape and will not be forgotten. The surviving soups stood in formation, some injured but all attentive. Oracle, the telepath, spoke up. Sir, we have limited resources. No access to Compound V, medical equipment, or Vought's infrastructure. How do we rebuild? The same way Hydra always has, Red Skull replied. From the shadows. Through patience. By converting others to our cause. He pulled up a holographic display from Salvaged. Vought technology. I acquired complete files on every soup in America before the facility was destroyed. Locations, power levels, psychological profiles, vulnerabilities. 7,433 individuals with abilities, ranging from minor to godlike. He manipulated the display, highlighting specific profiles. Most are like you were, controlled by Vought through contracts, public opinion, or pharmaceutical dependency. They are frustrated, restrained, told to suppress their nature for marketability. They are fertile ground for recruitment. You want to build an army from Vought's existing soups. Oracle said, understanding dawning. Turn their own assets against them. Not all of them, Red Skull corrected. Many are too corrupted by celebrity, too dependent on approval, too weak-minded for our purposes. But even 5%, 370, soups properly trained and ideologically committed, would be sufficient to reshape this nation. A soup named Tremor, a seismic manipulator who could trigger earthquakes, raised his hand. What about Homelander? You were training him, talking to him. Will he join us? Red Skull's expression was unreadable. Homelander is complicated. He is the most powerful soup on this planet. He is also a narcissistic child with God complex and desperate need for validation. I planted seeds with him. Ideas about true superiority, purpose beyond performance, the natural right to rule. Whether those seeds take root. He paused. We shall see. But we do not depend on him. Hydra succeeds because it is ideology, not personality cult. We are greater than any individual, including me. Cut off one head, 2 more grow back, Oracle quoted quietly. Exactly, Red Skull confirmed. He pulled up another set of files. Our immediate priorities. First, establish secure recruiting pipeline. We target soups who are angry, frustrated, or marginalized. Those Vought has rejected. Those who have been imprisoned or contained. Those who secretly resent their handlers. Second, he continued, we acquire resources. Money, weapons, safe houses. I have accessed accounts from my dimension through the cosmic cube. Hydra's wealth survives across realities. We have funding. Third, we plant agents within Vought itself. Oracle, your telepathy makes you invaluable for this. Can you impersonate normal employees telepathically? Make others see you as someone who belongs. Oracle considered, then nodded. With concentration, yes. I can project false identity into security guards, receptionists, anyone not trained against mental manipulation. It won't fool telepath detection systems. But Vought only has those in high-security areas. Good. You will infiltrate and extract intelligence, movement schedules, security protocols, Edgar's contingency plans. We were caught off guard once. Never again. Red Skull looked at his 15 soups with the pride of a commander who'd found worthy soldiers. In my world, Hydra survived 70 years of persecution because we were patient. We infiltrated governments, corporations, military organizations. We worked slowly, converting one person at a time, until we controlled systems from within. He gestured at the crude base around them. This is temporary. Within 6 months, we will have hundreds of soups. Within a year, we will have power sufficient to challenge Vought openly. Within 2 years, he smiled that terrible smile. Within 2 years, we will not need to hide at all. And the 7? Asked a soup named Shade, who could manipulate darkness. Homelander, Queen Maeve, Starlight, they're powerful and famous. They'll oppose us. The 7 are symbols, not soldiers, Red Skull replied dismissively. They perform for cameras. We train for war. When the time comes, they will fall or they will join us. There is no third option. He paused. Though I suspect several of them are already questioning Vought's control. Starlight has turned against the company. Maeve is alcoholic and bitter. A-Train is desperate to remain relevant. These are cracks we can exploit. He brought up one final image, Homelander, frozen mid-flight, cape billowing. That perfect all-American smile. But this one, Red Skull said softly. This one is key. Homelander has the power to either destroy us or make us unstoppable. I will continue cultivating him, feeding his resentment, his sense of superiority, his rage at being controlled. If I can break his conditioning, Turn him from Vought's mascot to Hydra's champion. He let the implication hang. The world would kneel, Oracle finished. Or burn, Red Skull agreed. Either outcome serves our purposes. In Vought Tower's executive suite, Stan Edgar sat across from Homelander, observing the soup with clinical focus. Homelander had been different since the Newark incident. More withdrawn, more thoughtful, less performatively cheerful, more dangerous. You've been quiet, Stan observed. Unusual for you. Homelander stared out the window at New York, his reflection ghostly in the glass. Red Skull is gone. You blew up your own facility to stop him. Killed your own Genesis units, your own assets. Just erased everything. Necessary measures, Stan replied calmly. Red Skull was becoming uncontrollable. Better to destroy the experiment than allow it to metastasize. He talked to me, Homelander said quietly. Before everything went to shit, he said things about power, about purpose, about how you've spent 20 years treating me like a product. Instead of, he trailed off. Instead of what? Stan prompted carefully. Homelander turned to face him, and something in those blue eyes was different. Harder, more focused. Instead of what I am. I'm not a hero, Stan. I'm not even really human. I'm something else. Something better. And I've spent my entire life pretending to be something. I'm not because you engineered me to crave approval like a drug. Stan Edgar's expression remained neutral, but internally he was recalculating threat levels, running through contingencies. The German got in your head. He told me the truth, Homelander countered. Everything he said about you, about Vought, about me, it was true. I am a product. IDEO performed for cameras. I have let you control me through psychological manipulation and carefully managed public opinion. He moved closer, not threatening, but not deferential either. But here's the thing, Stan. I'm done performing. Careful, Stan said softly. You're approaching a line you don't want to cross. Am I? Homelander smiled, but it wasn't his usual charming smile. It was something colder, more genuine. What are you going to do, Stan? Unleash your Genesis units? Oh wait, you blew them all up. Threaten my approval ratings? I'm starting to think I don't actually need public approval. Threaten to reveal my secrets? I'm starting to think I don't care. Stan Edgar studied the soup who'd been his greatest asset and greatest liability for 20 years. This was it. The moment he'd been preparing for since Homelander was a child. The moment when the godchild finally decided to stop pretending to be a servant. What do you want, Homelander? Control, Homelander said simply. Real control. Not over civilians or fans or people who worship me. Control over my own existence. I want you to stop managing me, stop manipulating me. Stop treating me like a mascot who needs a handler. I want to be what I actually am, the most powerful being on this planet, without pretending to be anything less. And if I refuse? Homelander's eyes began to glow red at the edges. Not a threat, just a reminder. Then I think we both know how this ends. You're brilliant. Stan, you've controlled me for 2 decades through psychology and addiction and carefully managed incentives. But Red Skull was right about one thing. Eventually, every addict either overdoses or seeks freedom from their addiction. I'm choosing freedom. Stan Edgar sat back in his chair, fingers steepled, mind racing through scenarios. He'd always known this moment might come. Had contingencies prepared, protocols in place. Weapons hidden in case Homelander finally broke free of his conditioning. But Red Skull's intervention had accelerated everything. Given Homelander ideas, validation, a framework to understand his resentment. The Nazi had poisoned the well before disappearing, leaving Stan to deal with the consequences. I can offer you a compromise, Stan said carefully. More autonomy, fewer public appearances, greater latitude in how you handle threats. But Homelander, his voice went cold. Understand that if you go completely off the leash, I will bring down every resource Vought has accumulated over 80 years to stop you. Not because I'm afraid of you, but because chaos is bad for business. Homelander considered this, then nodded slowly. Compromise. I can work with that. For now. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Stan, Red Skull is still out there, building something, and he's going to come for you eventually. When he does, Homelander smiled. I might not stop him. Depends on whether you've upheld your end of our new arrangement. He left, cape swirling dramatically, leaving Stan Edgar alone with the weight of an empire threatening to collapse from within. Stan picked up his phone and made a call to a number very few people had access to. It rang twice before being answered. "Mr. Edgar," came a cold, professional voice. "Activate Black Site Omega," Stan said quietly. "Full authorization. Begin immediate development of Contingency Prometheus." "The Homelander kill switch," the voice confirmed. "Understood. How soon will you need it operational?" Stan looked at the door Homelander had exited through. "Sooner than I'd hoped. Faster than is safe. We're running out of time." He hung up and returned his gaze to the New York skyline. Somewhere out there, Red Skull was rebuilding Hydra with stolen soups and toxic ideology. And here, in his tower, Stan Edgar's greatest creation was finally questioning its programming. The empire he'd built was fracturing, and the worst part was that he'd seen it coming, had prepared for it, and was still not entirely sure his preparations would be enough. In the abandoned subway station, Red Skull stood alone after dismissing his soups to rest. He held the cosmic cube fragment, feeling its power pulse against his palm, weaker now, stretched thin by dimensional travel and reality manipulation. It would need time to recharge, time he would use to build conventional power instead of relying on cosmic shortcuts. The cube showed him visions sometimes, possible futures, branching timelines. He saw versions where Hydra conquered this world, where soups bowed before ideological supremacy. He saw versions where he failed, where the boys killed him, where Homelander rejected his teachings. But mostly, he saw war. Glorious, terrible war between competing visions of superhuman control, corporate capitalism, versus fascist ideology versus desperate resistance. Red Skull smiled. War was where he thrived. War was where ideology proved itself. War was what separated the superior from the inferior, the strong from the weak, the worthy from the expendable. Captain America defeated me through luck and circumstance. Red Skull murmured to the darkness. But this world has no Captain America, no shining symbol of virtuous resistance. Only tired cynics, narcissistic gods, and corrupt executives. He clenched the cube. "I will not lose here. I will perfect what I began. And when I am finished, this world will understand what true hierarchy means." The cube pulsed in agreement, or perhaps just in resonance with his absolute conviction. Somewhere in the city above, the boys were planning their next move. Somewhere in Vought Tower, Stan Edgar was building weapons to kill gods. Somewhere between sanity and megalomania, Homelander was deciding whether he wanted to be hero, tyrant, or something entirely new. And throughout America, 7,000 soups went about their lives, unaware that they were about to be offered a choice: remain products or become soldiers. The war for the soul of superhuman existence had begun, and there would be no winners, only survivors. 3 weeks after Newark, Huey sat in the boys' new safe house, a condemned apartment building in the Bronx that had purchased through shell companies, surrounded by computer screens displaying a web of connections that made his head hurt. Red lines for Hydra activity, blue lines for Vought operations, yellow lines for soups who'd gone missing, green lines for potential allies. The web was getting denser, more chaotic, more impossible to track. "We're losing," Huey said flatly as the others gathered around his workstation. Butcher, nursing whiskey at 9 in the morning, grunted acknowledgement. "Course we are. We're 5 people fighting a Nazi with mind, control powers, and a corporation with infinite money. The math was never in our favor. Then why are we still fighting?" Huey demanded, frustration boiling over. Red Skull disappeared. "We have no idea where he is or what he's doing." Stan Edgar covered up Newark so thoroughly that even leaking the truth makes us look like conspiracy theorists. Homelander's still flying around saving cats and doing talk shows. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed, corrected, studying the screens with analytical focus. "You're just looking at the wrong metrics. Here," he pointed to a cluster of yellow lines. 17 soups have vanished in 3 weeks. Not dead, not in hiding. Vanished. No digital footprint, no sightings, nothing. That's not normal even for Vought's cleanup operations. Red Skull is recruiting, Frenchie said from where he was assembling a new weapon, something involving compound V samples and a delivery system that looked disturbingly like a grenade launcher. He is building his army quietly, taking soups who are angry or desperate, those who will listen to his ideology. "How do we stop something we can't see?" Huey asked. "We don't," Annie said. entering the room with coffee, and the exhausted expression of someone who'd been working double shifts at Vought while spying for the boys. We can't stop Red Skull directly, but we can prepare for when he reveals himself. Because he will. Men like him always do. They need validation. They need to show the world their vision. She set down the coffee and pulled up her own data on one of Huey's screens. I've been monitoring internal Vought communications. Stan Edgar is scared, really scared, for the first time since I've known him. He's redirecting resources, building something called Project Prometheus. I can't get details, but the budget allocation is massive. Billions. Whatever it is. It's designed to kill Supes. More Genesis units. Butcher guessed. Maybe. Or something worse. Annie looked at them seriously. Stan Edgar watched his facility explode and lost control of Red Skull. He's not going to make the same mistake twice. Whatever he's building, it'll be designed to kill any Supe, including Homelander. Good, Butcher said simply. Let the corporate cunt build weapons to kill the Nazis' Supe army. We sit back and watch them kill each other. Except we're in the middle, pointed out. When they start shooting, we're the ones who'll get caught in the crossfire. We need allies. Resources. Something that gives us leverage. Kimiko signed something urgent. Frenchie translated. She says we need to find Red Skull before he's ready. Strike while he's still weak, still building. Every day we wait, he gets stronger. Agreed, Butcher said. But how? He's not exactly advertising his location on social media. Huey stared at the screens, at the web of connections, at the pattern of disappearing Supes. Then something clicked. Wait, look at the disappearances. They're not random. He manipulated the data, highlighting specific profiles. Every Supe who vanished was either terminated by Vought, imprisoned for violence, or rejected from major teams. Red Skull isn't just recruiting anyone. He's specifically targeting Vought's rejects, the ones who have reasons to hate the system, which means he's accessing Vought's classified databases. And he realized the termination lists, psychological profiles, containment records. That information is locked behind security. I can't bypass, even with my access level. But Oracle could access it, Frenchie said. The telepath from Newark. If she can project false identities, she could infiltrate Vought Tower, extract data directly from someone's mind. So we find Oracle, we find Red Skull, concluded. But how do we find a telepath who can make us forget we've seen her? Silence as they absorbed the impossibility of the task. Then Huey had another realization. We can't find her, but we can make her find us. Everyone looked at him. Red Skull is recruiting angry Supes. Huey continued, working it out as he spoke. What if we fake a Supe? Create a legend about someone powerful, unstable, and pissed off at Vought. Plant the story where Hydra would look for it. When they investigate, we follow them back. A honeypot, Annie said, understanding dawning. We bait the trap with ourselves. That's mental, Butcher said. Then he grinned. I fucking love it. Who's our fake Supe? They all looked at Kimiko. She signed something sharp and angry. Frenchie translated. She says absolutely not. She's not pretending to be some tragic Supe victim waiting to join Nazis. It doesn't have to be Kimiko, Annie said quickly. It should be someone. Red Skull would want someone. Powerful enough to be valuable but damaged enough to be vulnerable to his ideology. She paused, then looked at Butcher. Someone like me. No, Huey said immediately. Annie, if Red Skull figures out your bait, then I blast him with enough light to vaporize that skull face. Annie interrupted. I'm serious. I'm the only one of us who's actually a Supe. I can access areas you can't, have conversations you can't, and survive encounters you can't. And I already have a legend, Starlight, the hero who left the Seven, who's questioning Vought, who's angry and disillusioned. You're also famous, pointed out. Red Skull would know you're too high profile to recruit. Not if I'm in hiding, Annie countered. We fake my death. Stage something public enough that it hits news cycles, but quiet enough that it could be covered up. A training accident, maybe, or a Supe fight gone wrong. I die. The world mourns. And then whispers start circulating. Starlight survived. She's in hiding. She's bitter about how Vought abandoned her. She wants revenge. And Red Skull hears those whispers, Frenchie said, following the logic. Sends Oracle to investigate. Finds Starlight, broken and angry and perfect for recruitment. and we follow Oracle back to Red Skull's base. Butcher finished. Brilliant. Absolutely fucking mental, but brilliant. There's one problem, Huey said quietly. If we fake Annie's death, Vought will investigate. Stan Edgar will dig. If he figures out it's fake before Red Skull does, the whole operation collapses. Then we make it real enough that even Edgar believes it. Annie said firmly. Real injuries. Real evidence. Real consequences. I'll actually disappear. No contact, no digital footprint, nothing. You'll all grieve publicly. It has to be authentic. You could actually die, Huey said, and his voice cracked slightly. If something goes wrong, if Red Skull sees through it, if Oracle reads your mind, then I die fighting Nazis. Annie interrupted, meeting his eyes. There are worse ways to go. And if we don't stop Red Skull now, more people will die. A lot more. I can do this, Huey. Let me do this. The room fell silent. Butcher studied Annie with new respect. He'd always seen her as naive. Too heroic, too committed to doing things the right way. But there was steel beneath the idealism. The same steel that had made her expose Compound V. That had made her fight Stormfront. That had brought her to the boys in the first place. Right, Butcher said finally. We fake Starlight's death. But we do it properly. No half measures. No room for error. Start planning the staging. Frenchie, we'll need realistic injuries and evidence. Huey, you'll leak the story through encrypted channels where Hydra monitors. And Annie, he looked at her seriously. You better be ready to sell the performance of your life. Because if Red Skull sniffs out the deception, you'll be walking into a Nazi camp with no backup and no escape plan. Annie nodded. I know. I'm ready. Kimiko signed something. Frenchie translated. She says if this is happening, she's going with Annie as backup. Pretend to be another rescued Soup, another candidate for recruitment. 2 Soups are better bait than 1. Agreed. And Kimiko's legend is already perfect, traumatized. No voice, trained in violence. Red Skull would see potential. They spent the next 6 hours planning every detail. The location, an abandoned warehouse in Brooklyn where Soups sometimes fought illegally. The staged fight, Annie versus a manufactured threat, something that would require her full power. The injuries, real enough to convince medical examination, controlled enough not to be fatal. The evidence, eyewitness accounts, security footage, forensic data. It was insane. It was desperate. It was probably going to get them all killed. But it was the only play they had. 5 days later, Annie January officially died in a warehouse explosion during an unauthorized Soup conflict. The blast was visible from 3 boroughs. Emergency responders found her costume torn and bloody. Scattered debris suggesting catastrophic power discharge. And just enough remains to confirm identity while being too damaged for detailed examination. Vought's official statement expressed deep sorrow. Homelander gave a tearful interview about losing his former teammate. The world mourned Starlight, the hero who tried to expose corruption and paid the ultimate price. Stan Edgar reviewed the evidence personally, his analytical mind searching for deception. The forensics were good, professional grade. The witnesses were convincing. The emotional responses from the boys and civilians seemed genuine. Still, something felt wrong. Too convenient. Too clean. He made a note to have surveillance maintained on the boys indefinitely. If Starlight had somehow survived, she'd slip up eventually. And when she did, Stan would know. But he had bigger concerns. Project Prometheus was entering final testing. Contingencies against Red Skull were being positioned. Homelander was becoming increasingly unstable. Stan Edgar was fighting a multi-front war with resources that were powerful but not infinite. Let Starlight be dead or alive. Either way, she was one variable among dozens more pressing. In the abandoned subway station, Oracle gasped and clutched her head as psychic shock rippled through her consciousness. Sir, Starlight is dead. Red Skull looked up from the files he was reviewing. Explain. Oracle described the warehouse explosion, the evidence, the public mourning. It reads authentic, sir. I'm not detecting organized deception in the collective consciousness around her death. The grief is genuine. Unfortunate, Red Skull said neutrally. She would have been valuable. Her power, her fame, her existing resentment toward Vought. She was perfect recruitment material. He paused. Unless. Sir. Nothing. Merely a thought. Red Skull returned to his files. But something nagged at him. The same instinct that had kept him alive for 70 years, fighting enemies who wanted him dead. Something about the timing, something about the convenience. He made a mental note to investigate personally if any rumors surfaced about Starlight's survival. 2 weeks later, those rumors began circulating. Whispers on dark web forums where desperate soups gathered. Someone matching Starlight's description, scarred and hiding, asking questions about resistance groups, about organizations that fought Vought, about whether there was anywhere a disillusioned Soup could find purpose beyond corporate control. Oracle brought the intelligence to Red Skull with barely contained excitement. Sir, we have reports of a blonde woman with light-based powers operating covertly in Chicago. She's making contact with underground soup networks. If it's Starlight, it could be Trap, Red Skull said calmly. Vought creating a legend to lure us into exposure. Or the boys attempting to infiltrate our operations through deception. Or it could be genuine, Oracle countered. Starlight faked her death to escape Vought's control. It matches her psychological profile, idealistic, dramatic, committed to fighting from shadows when public approach failed. Red Skull studied the reports, calculating probabilities. If genuine, Starlight was exactly the kind of recruit who could legitimize Hydra in the eyes of other soups. A beloved hero turned revolutionary. If Trap, investigating would expose Hydra's position and capabilities. Risk versus reward. Send Tremor and Shade, Red Skull decided. Have them observe from distance. If she is authentic, they will make contact. If she is bait, they will report and withdraw. Under no circumstances do they lead anyone back to this location. And if she passes their assessment? Oracle asked. Red Skull smiled. Then we bring her in. Show her what we're building. Offer her the purpose she's seeking. He paused, but maintained psychic monitoring. If I sense any deception, any hint that she is infiltrator rather than recruit, I will execute her personally. My ideology may be many things, but it is not stupid. Oracle bowed slightly and left to relay the orders. Red Skull stood alone, cosmic cube pulsing faintly in his hand. The trap was being set. The question was, who was baiting whom? In 70 years, he'd survived countless ambushes, infiltrations, and assassination attempts. He'd learned to smell deception the way predators smell fear. If Starlight was genuine, she would become Hydra's greatest asset. If she was a plant, she would become Hydra's first public execution, a message to all who thought they could deceive Johann Schmidt. Either way, the game was accelerating. The pieces were moving. And soon, very soon, the war would stop being fought in shadows and burst into terrible daylight. Red Skull looked forward to it. War revealed truth. And truth was what Hydra had always served, regardless of how brutal that truth might be. Annie January stood in a gutted Chicago apartment, her blonde hair cut short and dyed darker, her face bearing carefully applied scars that looked months old rather than days. Kimiko sat by the window in silence, watching the street below with predatory focus. They'd been in position for 72 hours, maintaining the performance of desperate soups seeking purpose beyond Vought's control. The waiting was worse than the danger. You think they bought it? Annie asked quietly, not for the first time. Kimiko signed without looking away from the window. They're watching us right now. Earthquake Soup and Shadow Manipulator. 1 block north, 1 block east. Annie resisted the urge to look. How do you know? Kimiko tapped her temple, then pointed at subtle vibrations in the water glass on the table. Tremors so faint Annie hadn't noticed, but Kimiko's enhanced senses had caught the pattern. Someone testing powers nearby, maintaining surveillance. Okay, Annie breathed. So we're under observation. That's good. That means they're considering us. In her earpiece, so small it was nearly invisible, Huey's voice crackled faintly. Annie, if you feel unsafe at any point, give the signal. We can extract you in under 2 minutes. But Annie knew that was optimistic. Huey, Butcher, and Frenchie were positioned 3 blocks away with tranquilizer rounds, armor-piercing ammunition, and Frenchie's experimental compound V grenade launcher. Against 2 trained soups, that might buy enough time for extraction. Against Red Skull and his entire force, they'd be dead before the cavalry arrived. This was a one-way mission. Annie had accepted that when she volunteered. A knock at the door, 3 slow, deliberate raps. Kimiko moved instantly, positioning herself between Annie and potential threat. Annie powered up, light crackling around her fists, ready to blast through the wall if necessary. Starlight, came a voice from outside. Male, deep, with a tremor beneath the words, like distant thunder. Tremor, she realized. The seismic soup. We know you're in there. We know what you're looking for. Open the door. Let's talk. Annie exchanged glances with Kimiko, who gave a slight nod. Ready for violence if this went wrong. Annie opened the door. Two figures stood in the hallway. One was massive, not Goliath level, but solid and imposing, with hands that seemed to vibrate, slightly even at rest. Tremor. The other was barely visible, a human-shaped absence of light. Darkness given form. Shade. You're a long way from New York, Tremor said, studying Annie with assessing eyes. Long way from the seven. From being dead. Turns out dying is easier than being Vought's mascot. Annie replied with calculated bitterness. I needed out. Faking my death was the only way Edgar would stop hunting me. Except he probably is still hunting you, Shade said, his voice like whispered absence. You're too valuable to abandon. Too dangerous to leave loose. Why haven't you gone further? Mexico, Europe, somewhere Vought's reach is weaker? Because running doesn't solve anything, Annie said. I didn't fake my death to hide. I did it to fight without restraints. Vought spends millions on my image, my approval ratings, making sure I stay palatable to Middle America. Now that I'm dead, she let her power flare brighter, illuminating the dim hallway with harsh light. I don't have to be palatable anymore. Tremor and Shade exchanged looks. Some wordless communication passed between them. We represent an organization, Tremor said carefully. One that helps supes who don't fit Vought's model, who are too violent, too angry, too honest about what they are. If you're serious about fighting back, really fighting, not just playing revolutionary in safe houses, we can introduce you to someone. Someone who, Annie demanded. Someone who understands what you're going through, Shade replied. Who's fought corporate control, government persecution, and survived by being smarter and more committed than his enemies. Someone who offers structure, purpose, brotherhood. The words were careful, designed to be appealing without revealing specifics. But Annie knew exactly who they meant. Red Skull, Hydra, the Nazi death cult that had nearly conquered the world in another dimension. I'm listening, Annie said. Then come with us, Tremor said. You and your friend. He nodded toward Kimiko. She doesn't talk much. Kimiko signed something deliberately aggressive. Annie translated. She says she's done talking to people who treat soups like products. Good, Shade said. And Annie could hear the smile in his voice even though she couldn't see his face. You'll fit right in. In her earpiece, Huey's voice was frantic. Annie, don't get in any vehicle with them. We won't be able to follow. But Annie was already moving, following Tremor and Shade down the hallway, Kimiko beside her. This was the moment. The infiltration. The point of no return. Behind them, 3 blocks away, Butcher watched through binoculars as Starlight and Kimiko climbed into a windowless van with Hydra agents. Fuck. They're mobile. You got tracking. On it, said, fingers flying across a laptop. The nanoscale tracker they'd injected into Annie's bloodstream was transmitting weakly, designed to evade detection scanners, but strong enough to follow at distance. Got the signal. They're heading south, toward the river. Frenchie, you ready? Butcher asked. Frenchie loaded the last of their equipment into their van. As ready as we'll ever be to follow 2 teenage girls into Nazi death camp. This is good plan, by the way. Very smart. Much safer than my suggestion to simply build bomb and level wherever. Red Skull is hiding. Your suggestions always involve leveling things, muttered. Starting the engine. Let's go. Stay back at least 3 blocks. If those soups spot a tail, this whole operation's blown. They followed Annie's signal through Chicago's industrial district, past abandoned factories and condemned warehouses, into areas where the city had given up pretending to maintain infrastructure. Perfect territory for someone who wanted to hide an army of super soldiers from the world's most powerful corporation. Inside the van, Annie sat across from Tremor and Shade, maintaining her performance of cautious hostility. How far are we going? Not far, Tremor replied. Our base is mobile. We move every few weeks to avoid detection. The place you're about to see, it's temporary, but it's secure. Who runs this organization? Annie pressed. You keep talking about someone who helps Soups, but you haven't given me a name. Names are dangerous, Shade said, especially for someone Vought wants dead. You'll meet him soon enough. If he decides you're genuine. And if he decides I'm not. Silence. Then Tremor said quietly, then you won't leave the base. But honestly, I don't think you're a plant. I can feel deception. It vibrates differently than truth. Your anger at Vought reads authentic to me. Because it was authentic, Annie realized. She wasn't pretending to hate Vought's corruption, the way they treated Soups like products, the casual cruelty of Stan Edgar's management. She was only pretending about wanting to join Hydra's alternative. The van stopped. The back doors opened. Onto a loading dock in a massive warehouse that looked abandoned from outside, but clearly wasn't. Armed figures in tactical gear watched from elevated positions, not Soups, as far as Annie could tell, but trained soldiers. Hydra agents from Red Skull's dimension, or local recruits who'd embraced the ideology. Welcome, Tremor said, to new HYDRA. They led Annie and Kimiko through corridors that had been transformed from industrial decay into military efficiency. Barracks, training areas, armories, and Soups, at least 30 that Annie could see, all moving with purpose and discipline that she'd never witnessed in Vought's facilities. No cameras, no handlers, no performance. Just soldiers preparing for war. Oracle appeared from a side corridor, her three eyes fixing on Annie with unsettling intensity. Starlight, the famous hero who exposed Compound V, fought Stormfront, and supposedly died in a warehouse explosion. Her voice was neutral, but her gaze was penetrating. Sir wants to meet you. But first, I'm going to read your mind. If you're a spy, an infiltrator, or bait for a trap, I'll know. And you'll die? Understood. Annie's blood went cold. This was the moment they'd planned for, the moment that could destroy everything. She had to think carefully, control her surface thoughts, keep the deep deception buried where even a telepath might miss it. Do what you need to do, Annie said with forced confidence. Oracle stepped closer, her hand reaching toward Annie's temple. Don't resist. It'll only hurt more. Contact. And suddenly, Annie felt another consciousness pressing against her own, methodical, invasive, searching through memories and motivations with clinical precision. Annie thought about her genuine anger at Vought, her real exhaustion from performing heroism, her authentic disillusionment with the system. She thought about the warehouse explosion. Let Oracle see the fear, the pain, the desperate decision to fake her death. She didn't think about the boys. She didn't think about the plan. She didn't think about the tracker in her bloodstream, or the rescue team following at distance. Oracle pulled back, studying Annie with narrowed eyes. You're complicated. I see. Anger, disillusionment, genuine, hatred for Vought's system. But there's something else. Something you're protecting. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Show me, or I'll dig it out. Annie made a split-second decision. Huey, she said quietly. I'm protecting Huey Campbell. He's the reason I left the Seven. The reason I exposed Compound V. And he still believes in heroism, still thinks we can fix things from within. I couldn't tell him I was alive. He'd try to stop me from doing what needs to be done. It was true enough that Oracle's telepathy couldn't detect the lie. Annie was protecting Huey, just not the way she was implying. Oracle studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Acceptable. Love makes people stupid, but it's genuine. You're not a plant. She looked at Kimiko. Now you. Kimiko signed something rapid and aggressive. Oracle didn't need translation. Telepathy worked through intention, not language. After a moment of mental contact, Oracle pulled back and nodded. She's even angrier than you are. Good. Anger is useful. Oracle, came a familiar voice from deeper in the warehouse. Bring them to me. Annie's skin crawled at the German accent, the absolute authority in those words. They were led to a central command area where maps, screens, and stolen Vought data covered every surface. And standing at the center, reviewing intelligence like a general planning invasion, was Red Skull. He turned as they entered, that skull face studying Annie with burning intensity. Starlight, I mourned your death. Vought's loss, I thought. Such potential, wasted in a warehouse. Explosion. His lipless mouth curved into something like a smile. I am pleased to learn the reports were exaggerated. I needed everyone to think I was dead. And he said, forcing herself to meet those eyes without flinching. Including you. Including me? Red Skull moved closer. Why would you care if Hydra believed you dead? Because I knew you'd come looking for recruits, Annie replied. I knew that if you thought I was alive and available, you'd approach me while I was still under Vought's surveillance. Faking my death gave me freedom to choose my own path. Not Vought's path. Not your path. Mine. Red Skull studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed, that harsh, humorless sound. Honest. I appreciate honesty. So many recruits come to me pretending to be committed when they are merely desperate. But you admit that you are here on your terms, not mine. That you have not yet decided if Hydra is worthy of your allegiance. He nodded with something like respect. This is refreshing. I want to know what you're building, Annie said. Tremor and Shade say you help soups who don't fit Vought's model. But I've heard stories about you. About HYDRA. About Nazi ideology and master races. And you wonder if trading Vought's corporate fascism for my ideological fascism is actually improvement. Red Skull finished. Another honest admission. Good. He gestured around the base. Look. Really look. What do you see? Annie looked. Soups training together without cameras. Mixed races, mixed genders, mixed backgrounds, all working with military precision. Not the performative diversity of the seven, but genuine integration based on capability. I see soldiers, Annie said. You see hierarchy based on merit, Red Skull corrected. Not marketability, not public opinion, not corporate quotas. Each person here has proven themselves through loyalty, discipline, and capability. That one, he pointed at a Hispanic soup lifting impossibly heavy weights, was terminated by Vought for excessive aggression. Here, his aggression is asset. That one, he pointed at a black woman whose eyes glowed with power, was rejected from the seven because her powers are too lethal for family-friendly branding. Here, lethality is valued. And the Nazi stuff? Annie pressed. The supremacy ideology? The master race theories? Red Skull turned to face her directly. I believed in those things in my world. I believed that genetic purity would perfect humanity. I was wrong. The admission hung in the air like a grenade. Captain America proved me wrong. Not through argument, but through action. He was genetically enhanced, my opposite in every way. And he was superior not because of his genes, but because of his conviction. So you don't believe in racial supremacy anymore? Annie asked skeptically. I believe in hierarchy, Red Skull replied. I believe that the strong should lead and the weak should follow. I believe that power confers responsibility. I believe that those with capabilities beyond normal humans should not be enslaved by those without. He gestured at the soups around them. The specifics of genetics, race, nationality, these are irrelevant. What matters is capability and commitment. Hydra 2.0 is not about racial purity. It is about power used with purpose instead of wasted on corporate performance. Annie felt herself being pulled in by the logic despite knowing it was toxic. This was how he recruited, by taking genuine grievances and offering structured solutions that sounded reasonable until you examined the foundation beneath. What's the endgame? Annie asked. You train these soups, build your army, and then what? Storm Vought Tower? Kill Stan Edgar? Take over the government? Eventually, Red Skull said calmly. But not yet. First, we grow. We recruit. We establish infrastructure beyond Vought's reach. We demonstrate that soups don't need corporations to give them purpose. They can find it themselves, in service to ideology greater than profit. He paused. And we wait for Vought to collapse under its own corruption. They are already weakened. Homelander is unstable. Public opinion shifts against them. Their Genesis units are destroyed. They are vulnerable in ways they've never been before. And when they collapse, Annie pressed. We offer an alternative, Red Skull said simply. Structure instead of chaos. Purpose instead of confusion. A new order where soups are not products, but the natural rulers they were always meant to be. There it was. The core belief beneath the reasonable surface. Not equality, not justice, just a different kind of tyranny. One where soups ruled because they could, justified by ideology instead of market forces. Annie had to force herself to nod thoughtfully, as if considering this seriously rather than planning how to destroy it. I want time to think, Annie said. This is a big decision. Joining you means becoming a target for both Vought and the government. Being branded a terrorist. Giving up any chance at normal life. You gave that up when you exposed Compound V, Red Skull replied. You cannot return to Vought. You cannot return to public heroism. Your only choices are hide forever or fight alongside those who share your anger. He extended his hand. Join us, Starlight. Use your power for something greater than quarterly earnings. Help us build the world soups deserve. Annie looked at his hand, the one with the cosmic cube fragment embedded in the palm, pulsing with stolen reality warping power. This was it, the moment that defined whether she'd successfully infiltrated Hydra or blown the entire operation. She reached out and shook Red Skull's hand. I'll train with you, Annie said. I'll learn what you're teaching. But I'm not making promises about loyalty until I see this new world you're building. Red Skull's skull face twisted into an approving smile. Skepticism. Another honest response. Very well, Starlight. Train with us. Learn our methods. See what disciplined power can accomplish. And then decide if Hydra deserves your commitment. He released her hand and turned to Oracle. Assign her in her companion quarters. Begin integration training tomorrow. But maintain monitoring. I trust honest skeptics more than eager converts. But trust must still be earned. As Annie and Kimiko were led away to barracks, Annie felt the weight of what she'd just done. She was inside Hydra's base. She had the tracker active. The boys were following at distance. The plan was working, but Red Skull's words echoed in her mind. The reasonable-sounding logic that made fascism sound like liberation. The genuine grievances he exploited to justify tyranny. She understood now why people joined organizations like Hydra, not because they were evil, but because they were angry and someone offered them purpose. In her barracks, alone with Kimiko, Annie finally let herself breathe. Kimiko signed a question. Are you okay? I shook hands with a Nazi, Annie whispered. Looked him in the eyes and pretended I might join his cause. And the worst part? She looked at Kimiko seriously. Part of me understood why people follow him. The anger is real. The grievances are real. He just offers the wrong solutions. Kimiko signed again. That's what makes him dangerous. Not the power. The ideas. Outside the barracks, 3 blocks away in their surveillance van, Butcher watched the tracker's signal stabilize. They're in. They're fucking in. Huey, you got the location? Got it, Huey confirmed, fingers flying across his laptop. Warehouse District, South Chicago. Sending coordinates to Mallory now. She can have CIA tactical teams here in 6 hours. No, said sharply. If we send in the cavalry now, Red Skull will execute Annie and Kimiko as spies before the teams breach the doors. We need to extract them first, then level the place. Or, Butcher said slowly, we do something smarter. We let them stay embedded. Feed us intelligence. Find out where Red Skull's recruiting. What his plans are, how many soups he's got. Use them as our eyes inside HYDRA. That's suicide, Huey said. If Oracle reads their minds again, then they die. Butcher interrupted. But they knew that when they volunteered. This is our chance, lads. Inside access to a Nazi super soldier operation. We can't waste it by panicking and extracting early. Looked at Butcher seriously. You really willing to leave them in there? 2 members of our team, surrounded by 30 hostile soups and a Nazi with a godstone. Butcher was quiet for a moment. Then no, but they would be. Annie volunteered for this knowing it was one way. Kimiko went in knowing she might not come out. We honor that by using what they're giving us, intelligence that could stop Hydra before Red Skull finishes building his army. Or we lose them both and accomplish nothing, Huey said bitterly. Then we better make damn sure we don't lose them, Butcher replied. Frenchie, how fast can you build something that'll take down 30 soups at once? Frenchie looked up from his equipment, with the gleam of a mad scientist given license to experiment. How much Compound V are you willing to let me weaponize? All of it, Butcher said grimly. Every dose we've got. Build me a weapon that'll level that warehouse and everything in it. We're going to need it. Inside Hydra's base, Red Skull stood alone in his command center, studying the cosmic cube. It pulsed faintly, showing him possible futures. In most, Starlight was genuine, a powerful recruit who would legitimize Hydra in the eyes of other soups. In a few, she was an infiltrator who would need to be executed as an example. The cube couldn't tell him which future was real, only which were possible. Red Skull smiled. Uncertainty was acceptable. In 70 years, he learned that absolute certainty led to complacency. Doubt kept you sharp. Paranoia kept you alive. We shall see, he murmured to the cube. We shall see if Starlight is savior or spy. And either way, he clenched the cube tighter. Hydra will endure. Cut off one head, two more grow back. This is our purpose. This is our promise. The war was accelerating. The players were in position. And soon, very soon, the final confrontation would come. A battle between corporate evil, ideological evil, and desperate resistance. With the fate of 7,000 soups hanging in the balance. The next 6 weeks unfolded like a slow-motion catastrophe, each side maneuvering for position. In a game where every move could trigger apocalypse, Annie embedded herself deeper into HYDRA, training alongside Red Skull soldiers while feeding intelligence to the boys through dead drops and encrypted signals. She learned their tactics, their ideology, their growing network of recruiters spreading through America's desperate soup population. 30 soldiers became 50. 50 became 70. Red Skull's vision was metastasizing into reality, a parallel power structure offering angry soups something Vought never had. Genuine purpose beyond profit. Kimiko became one of Hydra's most valued fighters. Her controlled brutality earning Red Skull's approval. Oracle grew to trust both women, never quite reading deeply enough to discover the deception buried beneath. Authentic anger at Vought. The Nazi had created something insidious, not a cult of personality, but a movement built on legitimate grievances wrapped in fascist solutions. In Vought Tower, Stan Edgar watched his empire fracture. Project Prometheus reached completion, a weapon designed to kill Homelander through wavelength disruption of Compound V at the molecular level. But deploying it required proximity, timing, and certainty that the collateral damage would be acceptable. Meanwhile, Homelander grew bolder, ignoring directives, making decisions without corporate approval, testing the boundaries of his new freedom. Like a god learning he didn't need worshippers after all. The Seven crumbled. A-Train overdosed on Compound V, trying to remain relevant. Queen Maeve finally drank herself into retirement. New heroes were recruited, but they were replacements, not legends. Vought's mythology was dying, and Stan Edgar knew it, which made him more dangerous, not less. Cornered predators fought hardest, and in their safe house, the boys prepared for war. Frenchie's weaponized Compound V was a masterpiece of destructive chemistry, aerosolized, fast-acting, designed to overload soup metabolisms and cause catastrophic cellular breakdown. Not instant death, but agonizing and inevitable. It violated every ethical boundary they'd set for themselves. But Red Skull had forced them past ethics into pure survival calculus. The convergence came on a cold November morning. Red Skull decided it was time for Hydra to announce itself publicly. Not through terrorism, that was crude. Through demonstration. He would execute Stan Edgar live on national television, broadcast by every hijacked frequency, showing the world that Vought's era of control had ended. 70 loyal soups would storm Vought Tower while Oracle blanketed the building in telepathic interference, rendering security systems useless. It would be Hydra's coronation, the moment when they stopped hiding and claimed their place as humanity's new masters. And he got word to the boys 48 hours before the assault. Butcher faced an impossible choice: warn Stan Edgar and watch him deploy countermeasures that would kill Annie and Kimiko along with Hydra forces, or let the assault happen and try to extract their people during the chaos. While two monsters destroyed each other, he chose chaos. The assault on Vought Tower became the most watched event in history. 70 soups moving in coordinated military formation, smashing through security like it was tissue paper. Oracle's telepathic blanket meant no alarms, no reinforcements, no effective resistance. Red Skull walked through Vought's lobby like a conqueror, flanked by his soldiers, heading for the executive suite where Stan Edgar waited. But Stan Edgar hadn't survived 20 years managing Homelander by being unprepared. The Genesis units were destroyed, yes, but Project Prometheus was operational. As Red Skull's forces breached the executive level, weaponized wavelength generators activated throughout the building, targeting the specific frequency that destabilized Compound V. Hydra's soups began screaming as their powers turned against them. Cells breaking down, enhanced metabolisms consuming themselves. Red Skull staggered, the cosmic cube flaring wildly as it tried to protect him from technology that shouldn't exist in this dimension. And then Homelander arrived. He'd been watching from above, curious about how this would play out. Watching two organizations that had tried to control him destroy each other had entertainment value. But seeing Hydra's Supes dying triggered something unexpected, not compassion, but territorial rage. These were Supes, his domain, his people, even if they were Nazi soldiers. Stan Edgar was killing them with technology, proving that corporations could still murder gods. Homelander descended through the roof with apocalyptic fury. What followed was carnage. Homelander tore through Vought security, through the few surviving Genesis units, through Stan Edgar's final defenses, not to save Red Skull, but to assert dominance, to prove that Supes couldn't be controlled by corporations, or Nazis, or anyone except themselves. In the chaos, the boys made their move. Butcher, Frenchie, and Huey breached Vought Tower from below, fighting through the war zone to reach the executive level. They found Annie and Kimiko helping wounded Hydra soldiers retreat, still maintaining their cover even as everything collapsed around them. Time to go, Butcher shouted over the sounds of combat. Heat vision cutting through walls. Explosions, screaming. They ran through corridors of devastation. Behind them, Homelander fought Red Skull directly. Laser vision against cosmic cube reality manipulation. Two visions of supremacy, narcissistic and ideological, colliding with world-ending force. The boys reached their extraction point just as Homelander landed a hit that sent Red Skull crashing through windows and out of the building. The Nazi fell 50 floors, cosmic cube flaring desperately to cushion the impact. He survived, barely, and teleported away with his remaining forces, retreating to fight another day because Hydra always survived, always regenerated, always came back. But the damage was done. Vought Tower burned. Stan Edgar was missing, possibly dead in the attack. Homelander stood in the wreckage, cape billowing, having just saved and doomed himself simultaneously. He'd proven Supes didn't need corporate or fascist control, but he'd also revealed himself as the threat Stan Edgar had always prepared for. The world watched. 7 billion people witnessed the lies stripped away. Supes weren't heroes or products. They were weapons. And the weapons had just turned on their makers. In the aftermath, the boys sat in their van 3 miles away, covered in blood and dust, watching news coverage of the catastrophe they'd helped orchestrate. Did we win? Huey asked quietly. Butcher took a long drink of whiskey. We survived. That's not the same thing. Annie held her head in her hands, the weight of what she'd done crushing down. She'd infiltrated HYDRA, fed intelligence to the boys, helped trigger a conflict that killed dozens. Some of those Hydra soldiers had genuinely believed they were fighting for liberation. They died screaming as Project Prometheus liquefied their enhanced biology. Red Skull is still out there, said, monitoring communications. Escaped with maybe 20 Supes. Wounded but alive. Stan Edgar's status is unknown, Frenchie added. But Vought's command structure is shattered. Stock price crashed. Government is mobilizing to seize control. And Homelander? Annie asked. They watched the news footage. Homelander stood atop the burning tower, making a statement to cameras. No more. No more Vought. No more masters. No more control. We're done performing. We're done pretending. Supes are superior. And it's time the world acknowledged that. Not a manifesto. A declaration of independence. He's gone rogue, Butcher said. Fully off the leash. Everything Stan Edgar feared, everything Red Skull wanted. The most powerful Supe on the planet just declared war on humanity's right to govern him. So what do we do? Huey pressed. Butcher looked at his team, exhausted, traumatized, victorious and defeated simultaneously. They destroyed Vought's control structure and prevented Red Skull from building a fascist Supe empire. But in doing so, they'd unleashed Homelander without restraints and scattered 70-plus trained Supe's soldiers into the wind. We rest, Butcher said finally. We heal. We regroup. And then, he looked at the burning tower on every screen. We prepare for whatever comes next. Because this isn't over. Red Skull will rebuild HYDRA. Homelander will try to establish Supe supremacy. And we're the only ones mental enough to fight both. Kimiko signed something. Frenchie translated with a tired smile. She says at least we'll never be bored. They sat in silence, watching the world change in real time. The age of controlled superheroes was over. The age of unrestrained power had begun. And somewhere, between fascist ideology and corporate evil and desperate resistance, humanity would have to find a way to survive gods who no longer pretended to serve. Red Skull had brought his ideology to a new world and found it already corrupted, enough to embrace his worst ideas. Stan Edgar had built an empire on controlled exploitation and watched it burn when control failed. Homelander had finally broken free of programming and didn't know what to do with freedom except prove his superiority. And the boys, 5 humans with weapons, and rage and an absolutely refusal to accept that gods should rule, would continue fighting because someone had to. The war was far from over. In some ways, it had only just begun. But for tonight, they'd survived. They'd prevented 2 apocalypses and triggered a third. They'd infiltrated HYDRA, destroyed Vought's core, and lived to fight another day. Sometimes survival was enough. Sometimes survival was everything. In a medical facility beneath Chicago, Red Skull recovered from injuries that should have been fatal. Cosmic Cube slowly regenerating his damaged body. He'd lost this battle, but Hydra had survived worse. The organization was scattered, yes, but scattered seeds grew into new forests. He would rebuild, recruit, adapt. In an undisclosed location, Stan Edgar watched news coverage of his empire's fall and made calculations about resurrection. Vought had survived worse scandals. Markets stabilized. Governments forgot. He had resources, leverage, blackmail material on every important person in America. The company might burn, but the control would return. It always did. And in the sky above New York, Homelander flew alone, finally free of masters, finally able to do whatever he wanted. He just had to figure out what that was. 3 forces, fascist ideology, corporate control, and unrestrained power, would continue their collision course. And caught in the middle, the boys would keep fighting with everything they had. Because that's what humans did when faced with monsters. They survived. They adapted. They fought back. Even when the monsters had laser eyes and godstones and billion-dollar war chests. Even when survival seemed impossible. Especially then.